10 seconds.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the KSM Summer Showdown. My name is Sarah, and I'll be your host for this evening. Tonight, for your viewing pleasure, we have 4 teams playing across 6 games to decide who will become the Summer Showdown champions. I've just noted the cam's a little bit wonky, but I will fix that later on. We don't need to worry about that right now. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about what you guys are going to see tonight. We'll be starting, as you always should, in the upper bracket. Our 4 teams are randomly split up into 2 best-of-1 series. Our winners will move on to our best of 3 final, and our losers will drop down to the lower section to decide who will get 3rd and 4th place. Now, it's all well and good, but what would a dungeon race be without casting, in my word? That we have an extremely handsome desk of casters tonight. First up, he's the host for the Titanforge a host for the Titanforge podcast. He writes the weekly route for Radar.io, and if I'm not mistaken, he was part of the team that completed the highest key in the quickest time for M+ Season 2. Welcome, Dratnos. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks. Glad to be here.
Is my voice coming through?
Yeah, now it's coming through. Okay.
Did I just do that whole thing without any sound on?
It's okay. No, you were on. Your sound was on Twitch, so I was following along
fantastic,
there.
Fantastic. I will make sure I do that next time. How are you doing, Jonas? How are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah.
Fantastic. I wonder.
Really excited.
Thought I'd mess up a little bit then. So you've had a chance to look over the bracket for tonight. Are there any dungeons in particular that you are looking forward to?
This first one has a nasty combo that we've never seen on live. That I'm looking forward to seeing how it handles the teams.
I definitely think it's going to be interesting. Okay, completing our lineup. Okay, let me get this right, 'cause it's quite a mouthful. You're the Marksmanship Class Guide Writer, the Marksmanship M Plus Guide Writer, and the Beast Mastery M Plus Guide Writer for Wowhead. I think that's all of them. You'll probably correct me if it's not quite the case. A moderator and expert for the True Shot Hunter Lodge Discord, but most importantly, he's an ex-KSM player, and we love our ex-KSM players here. Moose, how are you doing, sir?
I am good. So I do not write. We do not have a Marksmanship Mythic Plus guide for Wowhead. There's only a BM Mythic Plus guide, but I do a lot of just the general hunter pet taming. All those casual friendly articles as well. But yeah, you got everything else right.
Well, I mean, you never know. Maybe we'll see one soon. Maybe. So, Moose, Season 3 is right around the corner, meaning that tonight is probably going to be the last time that we will see Reaping in competitive play. Are you going to be sad to see the Epics go, or are you not really too bothered about it?
Yes, this is the last hurrah. 2 days we get beguiling. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be very sad to see it go. Reaping is very much pull everything, pull as big numbers as you can, go, as fast as you can. And it's going to be a huge change of pace with beguiling, whereas it's much more controlled affix. CC something, and it's not going to be always the highest DPS is the best thing. Like, you're going to want classes that are really good at controlling the emissaries and stuff like that. And so it's a lot more slow paced, a lot more strategy involved than Reaping. But I think it's a good change of pace, and I think it's a new challenge that a lot of people will like. So
I think it's gonna be great to maybe get a few new strats in, see if we can play around with it, see if it modifies the existing strats. Righty, well, we have our bracket. We have our teams, we have our casters, so I think without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Before we look at the first game, we should mention, like Dratnos was saying, it's a very spicy combo. We thought it'd be a little bit of fun to let you guys at home pick the Epic combinations for the first 2 games. So if this goes horribly wrong, you have no one but yourself to blame. This was not our doing, this was you. Let's have a look at the intro screen for this first one. Now, Underrot 18, Pain for Femme versus Hulu and the Blowfish. You guys chose Tyrannical, Teeming, Quaking, Reaping. Dratnos, give us your thoughts on these 2 teams, and of course these lovely affixes here.
Okay, so we're seeing a lot of standard kind of Season 2 compositions coming out from both these teams. This is a fitting send-off to what's really dominated the metagame these past few months. We got Prot Warrior, Resto Druid, a Rogue, and a Windwalker on both teams. Then we have a little bit of a difference. Paint for Femme is playing 2 Outlaw Rogues, whereas Hula and the Blowfish have Hula on the Havoc Demon Hunter. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out for them. But these affixes are really where this dungeon is going to get interesting. Quaking and Tyrannical have never existed together on live. These two affixes next to each other are extremely, extremely difficult on some boss fights. So I'm looking forward to it coming during a Tantrum on Kragmaw, during the other ability on the third boss, Spore Collar Xantia, the AoE thing, and even during the last boss. Like, imagine when you have to like stack to clear that debuff in the circle, getting a Quaking. That happens, and it's lethal on Fortified. On Tyrannical, I bet we're going to see some boss wipes thanks to these affixes. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, let's hope the teams say that we don't have any wipes. Let's get straight into this game. Hopefully this is gonna work like it did in practice. There we go. Into the first game. Underrot, off you go, boys.
Awesome. Yes, we're on a nice summer expedition here to the wonderful Underrot. 4 bosses, pretty short timer as well. One of the dungeons that is probably least brutal with this set of affixes. Teaming here too, so teaming Quaking. And of course we do have Pain for Femme up against Hula and the Blowfish. Moves, who you looking at in this matchup? Anything interesting you see in these teams?
I mean, they're pretty standard teams. I think the double outlaw rogue is going to be really good here. They're
starting off
with a pretty big pull here. Yeah.
So this is Paint for Femme. Looks like they're taking all of these the first pulls plus one of the bridge pulls. So this is like 9 mobs all at once. They're firing off their bloodlust even on Tyrannical here on Trash, whereas Hula and the Blowfish are saving their lust for the first boss here. And they CC'd 1 Blood Priest, and they're going to clean it up afterwards. This is a good play because too many Blood Priests, and you can start having those Gifts of Gahoon and Dark Reconstructions going off, and that can really add a lot of time to this pull. So they just decided to pull this thing, focus down one Blood Priest, and then add in the second Blood Priest. And this lust is working out for them. These 2 Outlaw Rogues are just doing insane damage. And they're going to take care of all of this trash, 14% in 1 pull. Looks like they're going to Shroud through here now. Yeah. Quake nearly pulls them out of the Shroud, but does not quite do that. And now they're going into Elderly Axa, whereas Hula and the Blowfish still working on this first trash pull.
Yeah, so opening up on Elder Alexa, and if you don't know, basically all you have to do here is interrupt the Blood Bolts. It doesn't really do anything, the boss itself. Everything else is pretty avoidable. It will spawn 1 ad, which you have to interrupt. And this is pre-nerf, so the Blood Bolts still pretty much one-shot you, and this is Tyrannical, so guaranteed 1-shot if 1 goes off, unless you pop Last Stand, a couple other things. You know, looking at the Prot Warrior right there, he spell reflected the ad, which instantly killed the ad. And Prot Warrior is just really good on this boss due to that spell reflect.
Yeah, the higher the keystone level, the higher percent damage the boss will take from each blood bolt that gets spell reflected. So in these high, like 18 tyrannical keys, the boss actually dies faster than it does on lower keys with the spell reflect. All right, so Hula and the Blowfish, looks like they're going to wait on their Shroud here for this Quake, and then they're going to sneak on through. It's going to cost them a couple seconds, but it is going to make it a little bit of a safer play. And they are now moving in onto Elderly Axa
It's definitely safe. In case you don't know, the Quaking, if it deals damage to anyone in a Shroud, it will break them out of the Shroud. And so obviously if you're spread out during the Shroud, it's not a big deal, but they did take the safe play and wait until that Quaking went off before they shrouded.
All right, and we do have the drums coming out from Hula and the Blowfish. Neither team here playing a real lust, so they're going to have to rely on those drums here. One thing that's worth mentioning is that these games are being played on the tournament realm, so players have access to whatever gear they want at standardized item level. So it's not live servers like the last Keystone Masters was. But here we see Paint for Femme. They're pulling this teaming Maggot and Tick pull, and they are going to survive it here. This one, you'll see Ironbark comes out on Femme. There's a lot of tank damage with all those stacks of the bleed from the Ticks. And then these maggots are all going to be controlled by AoE CC. One of the nice things about this composition is you have access to Shockwave, Ring of Peace, and Leg Sweep, which lets you, as long as these maggots are synchronized on their casts, this many of them isn't even a problem because you have access to all of those different CC effects.
Yeah, so teaming Underrot, that is actually one of the nastier pulls in the instance if you don't handle it properly. Just having 4 of them, and obviously they handle it rotate their CCs.
And now they're going to reap into the next pull. Yeah.
So you see on the right, Hula and the Blowfish are still on Elder Alexa.
Mm-hmm. They are. No!
Oh no!
They've had a death here.
They've had
the Windwalker down. It's not necessarily a wipe just yet. It looks like they have 2 dead. They still have 2 DPS and a healer alive. If they can keep this thing kicked, they might be okay. They're going to have to tunnel it down. But this is very dangerous here. Hula is tanking the boss currently, is alive. It looks like they're going to kill Elderly Axa just barely. Wow, with 3 down. That is much better, though. This would have been a complete disaster if they had fully wiped here. But it looks like they may be looking at, waiting to get that res off, that mass res. Meanwhile, Pain for Fem are just making short work of Kragmaw's room, reaping into a pull, killing all the stuff in that pull, and they're about to reap again here. You can see they have souls active, and their enemy forces is about to hit another 20% breakpoint. They might just have reaping spirits active the entire room here and pulling into the next pack. It looks like a death did just come out from them, though. They had to expend a battle res, so they're now out of that resource for the next couple minutes.
Yeah, so this second room is pretty easy to deal with. You don't want to pull too big because you have disease lashers, and then you have some of the other mobs that you have to get interrupts on. So you can't pull too big. Obviously, you're limited in the scope that you have 4 melee interrupts in this comp. You do have outlaw rogues with gouge and blind and stuff like that are able to CC some of the mobs, such as the maggots and stuff like that. But pulling too big can be pretty scary. But you do want to pull all these reapings into other mobs, since the reaping itself doesn't actually do that much.
Yeah, we're seeing the lashers, the blood swarmers, and the maggots being the mobs that are really put a cap on how much you can pull at once, and then you can just take as many living rots as you want at any given time. The maggots, you don't technically have to stop their cast, but it is very dangerous if you let them go off. So you'll see almost every team that comes into the Underrot plans to not let any fetid bile casts come off, or rotten bile casts come off on the maggot. And then, of course, you can only ever pull as many lashers as you have a kick to assign to each of them. Part of the reason we see these compositions with so many melee kicks is because you are then able to pull 3 or 4 lashers at once, and you're not gonna be exhausted on your kicks like a ranged would be with their longer kick.
Yeah, having double outlaw rogue in this area is actually very good. One of the things that outlaw rogue, typically when you're CCing the maggot, it starts to DR between stuns and stuff like that. But gouge does not actually share a DR, and so rotating gouges in between those stuns and stuff helps lock down maggots very easily.
Yeah, outlaw rogue is phenomenal at this room because they also bring the full 6 second between the eyes stun for the blood swarmers, the feral blood swarmers. Those mobs can be pretty deadly, but outlaw rogues cause them to take extra damage while they're stunned, and also stun them for half the time they're alive, making them a lot more easy to deal with. Just a great room for this deck. You can see here, Pain for Fem, they're going to kill these last 2 mobs, and this is a beautiful pathing here. They're going to trigger the last Reaping Wave, drink their pre-pots, and pull Kragmaw the Infested. They don't have Bloodlust available, so Tyrannical Kragmaw without Bloodlust is going to take a long time, but they've decided it's going to be better to do this than to double back later, and I think they're probably right on that. One strategy you'll see some teams use is they'll wait until their lust comes up before engaging Kragmaw, but with reaping onto the boss here, this is just going to be too efficient for them to want to avoid doing that. So they're just going to fight this boss, use all their defensives, and get through this Reaping Wave very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's the right call. They have 4 minutes until Lust. I don't think there's any way you kill both the Skelly packs and then the mobs before the 3rd boss and not still have time left over on Lust. So I think that is definitely the right call. Hula. So you see Hula. So now they are at the second room, and they're pulling in a similar fashion. They're pulling 4 or 5 mobs at a time, and again, they're limited to the blood swarmer and the disease lashers. You can only pull so many.
2 blood swarmers at once in that pull, but they do take care of it with the Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace is excellent at preventing that blood swarmer from actually getting to its target. And it looked like both of them fixated on Zuli, the healer. And they were able to just stand in that ring, and it was no problem at all. And now they're going to do another pull here. Hula and the Blowfish are. This one contains 1 Lasher, 1 Maggot, 3 Rots, and a huge Reaping Wave. And they're going to I-beam it down. Love to see the Havoc Demon under here. Hula just doing massive damage out of that I-beam and into that Metamorphosis. Pain for Fem, meanwhile, working on Kragmaw. Kragmaw down at 40% for them. That fight, one thing about the Kragmaw fight is that the time between tantrums is pretty short, except for that very first time when you engage it. So one of the reasons that you see teams Bloodlust Kragmaw so often is that it really reduces the length of the fight because it might remove a tantrum from how long you have to fight it, and that the tantrum really slow it down because you can't do effective damage during it, and you have a bunch of healing that you need to do at that time. But they're soldiering on through it. We haven't had any lethal Quake overlaps with the Tantrum. The Tantrum does high damage on Tyrannical, so I was really looking to see if that Quake was going to line up and kill anybody. But it looks like it has not. Paint for Femme does take down Kragma and is moving on here with a pretty sizable lead. This is going to be Paint for Femme's game to lose. We're going to have to see them commit some kind of massive error in order to fall behind here, or we're going to have to see Hula and the Blowfish just come out with a phenomenal strategy to make up the few minutes they're now behind.
Yeah, I agree with that. So Pain for Femme is moving on to this the Guardian pack, and one of the mobs that you really want to watch out here for is the Fallen Death Speaker, and they cast Raise Dead, which isn't that big of a deal, but they cast Wicked Frenzy, and Wicked Frenzy puts an Enraged debuff on a random mob that they're accompanied with, and it puts a huge dot on the tank, and both need to be dispelled or soothed rather, and letting either of those go unchecked tend to be very lethal for the tank. So a lot of times you'll see tanks kite here. Outlaw Rogue again is very phenomenal in locking up the Death Speakers. I think a single Outlaw Rogue can solo all of the Death Speakers between Gouge and Stun and all of that. But again, you do see teams pull two of them at the same time, and this is, again, tyrannical, so it is definitely possible. You do see them chain into the second group here at the end, but that can be a very lethal mob.
You can see Femme even kiting here once that has gone off, but you're absolutely right. Outlaw Rogue's phenomenal at stopping the Wicked Frenzies from going off. With a Protection Warrior, you also have a bit of wiggle room where you can Spell Reflect, and that'll cause the first auto attack, which would apply the debuff to you, to instead reflect it back on the target. So that gives your healer a little bit more time to get the soothe off, or for you to realize that you need to start kiting, assuming you can activate that Spell Reflect real quick. But it looks like Femme isn't even going to bother using Spell Reflect to do damage to those things. They're just going to move on to this Defiler pack. With teaming active, there's also Death Speaker here, but Death Speaker is a lot less lethal when there aren't any skeletons around because it doesn't do the Wicked Frenzy ability. So they're now going to trigger their fourth Reaping Wave, killing everything nice and evenly to make that spawn all at once, and then pulling it right into Sporecaller Xancha. Sporecaller Xancha with Tyrannical and a Reaping Wave. This is spooky because there are a lot of Lost Souls here, and those do the Shadow Smash effect, and they expel Soul on their death, which causes them to, you can see they're having a lot of very tight positioning here that they need to execute, and they also want to not stand in these balls or these mushrooms. I don't know how this team's alive here. Every time I do this,
it's a very spooky pull. I actually hate doing this pull. With all the things on the ground, and then you're trying to clear mushrooms. Like, I mean, you can see here they have a bunch of mushrooms that they still need to clear. They actually did a pretty good job. I think they used. I didn't see it, but did they clear some early on, or did they? They must have cleared.
Yeah, you can see Sebek's Cloak of Shadows here is on cooldown, so he's used that to take care of all of the mushrooms from one quadrant to the room. The team here has also committed their Bloodlust to this pull, which makes sense. This looks like by far the most lethal pull in the dungeon. This was the opportunity for Paint for Femme to wipe, but now that Reaping Wave is gone, it looks like they're going to be in the clear for this fight. Although, that being said, you can never really count out Tyrannical Quaking Xancha here. If a bad overlap of Quaking comes, there could very much be further deaths here. You can see, even with nobody stacked on Femme, the boss is just hitting like a truck, and that Quaking comes in and knocks out more of Femme's health. And also, Mero can't, be dumping regrowths in right when that Quake happens. So by no means is this boss fight over.
Luckily, they haven't gotten any Quaking overlaps during the big AoE. That would be a nasty overlap.
Mm-hmm. That one, yeah. I wonder to what extent, there might be some bosses where you can look at the Quaking timer and time when you pull it, so that you guarantee that you're not going to have it overlap if it's on a consistent timer. I've never been smart enough to do that, but I wonder if these teams might be. That's sort of.
I mean, it was on the tournament realm, so they could have practiced before. I don't know how much these teams did practice, but it was an option since it is on tournament realm.
Meanwhile,
so Hula and the Blowfish are on Kragma. This is a very long boss, and so they actually committed their lust to Kragma, which of course is definitely a preferred option if the timer lines up. It definitely helps. Hopefully, it helps eliminate some of the tantrums that you occur.
Yeah, I think that this is a great bloodlust for a standard Underrot path. The Kragma being your second lust whenever it comes up. But it looks like Paint for Femme just have this route that is massively faster than that would be. If Paint for Femme wanted to lust Kragma, they would only get one lust, it looks like. So they've instead built this route that doesn't even bother with that. And Paint for Femme does successfully down Spore Caller Zancha, moves on here to this pull of Death Speaker Worm, the teeming worm over there, and the 4 skeletons. This one is a very important one to control the Wicked Frenzies on, because the tank really does not want to kite while that stationary worm is active there. So keeping the Wicked Frenzies from going off is going to be vital, and they're gonna take care of some of the mobs here and pull in the next Defiler, which does require a bunch of kicks as well here. So a lot of control on these mobs is going to be needed from Paint for Femme, but they are executing this flawlessly. There are very few unwanted casts going off.
Yeah, they haven't made too many mistakes this dungeon. I think there was that one early death after the
yeah, it looked like Shallow
Other than
went
that,
down
they
and
haven't.
Pragma Trash.
Yeah, they haven't really had too many mistakes, and they've been pulling pretty big and efficiently.
Yes, so now they just have to kill these 2 mobs here, and it looks like 1 worm on top of that. And then they will trigger their final Reaping Wave and pull that presumably onto the last boss, which is going to be awesome. Meanwhile, Hula and the Blowfish are nearly done with Cragmaw the Infested. They're running into this kind of tantrum spam phase that gets really obnoxious with that boss, where it just keeps tantruming over and over again. But that boss is nearly dead, nearly gone for them. But here we do see Paint for Femme about to reach the final pull of the dungeon here. They take down this horror. They have 2 Corruptors to go, and yeah, these 2 Corruptors are going to spawn the last Reaping Wave of the dungeon, and they are going to take it onto the last boss and just nuke everything down with that huge Outlaw AoE.
Yeah, so something to watch out for on this last boss, and we sort of mentioned it earlier, is the quaking when you're trying to cleanse everyone. So obviously, if you don't know this boss, after certain percentages, he sends out a cleanse, and throughout the fight, you get stacking damage buff, and you have to use this cleanse to cleanse those stacks. And obviously, you have to be within a 10-yard radius of the cleanse, and so this quaking is going to be very dangerous trying to stack up to get that cleanse.
Yes, now the team does have a little bit of a safety net in that they do have Cloak of Shadows, a Dispel, and depending on what talents the Windwalker Ricky has taken, he may have access to Diffuse Magic as well, so that they might have this situation where if they get one bad overlap, they can just use their cloaks and stuff.
So you see right there, 2 of them actually missed the cleanse, and you see 3 of them rather. 3 of them are still at 3 stacks, and they're taking a pretty hefty amount of damage. 4 stacks now, whereas everyone else is at 1 stack. So that quaking definitely did hurt them a little.
Yeah, and now it looks like they've now desynchronized a little bit. Wow. People very, very low on Paint for Femme's team here, though. And if Mewa goes down, they do not have a B-Res. Because this is the tournament realm, nobody has access to any engineering battle res, like you may have seen in Season 1 of Keystone Masters. There's just no access to that ability. So Mewo is if he goes down, it is going to be a wipe for Paint for Femme, as long as the boss is not within a very close kill range. But luckily, they do all survive here, and it looks like they're stable. They're only as stable as, with quaking, they're only stable until a bad quake happens, or if a spore spawns. One thing that's fun about this boss, a great gameplay mechanic that's really exciting, is sometimes a spore will just spawn in the middle of your group and kill everybody. Yeah, Mewo goes down right there to a spore of some kind. Unclear whether that was a dodgeable one.
Have a battle res, so they're going to have to survive this by themselves.
Yeah, so
just all of their personals and healing that they have.
This is going to be really, really tight. Okay, so the good news for Paint for Femme is they can probably wipe and still kill this boss before Hula and the Blowfish manage to finish the dungeon. The other good news for them is they have very durable DPS, right? They have Outlaw Rogues that can presumably try and roll. Yeah, you see the Leech rolled by these 2 Outlaw Rogues. That is a very good play from these Rogues. As soon as their healer goes down, they're going to just focus their Roll the Bones on trying to find Leech, and that's going to help keep them alive. And then they're going to use their Cloaks, their Crimson Vials. Ricky is going to be using his defensives and potentially his Effuse or whatever Vivify thing too, to keep everybody up as needed. Very, very, very tight here, though. The boss on Tyrannical takes a long time. You can see 73 energy, 74 energy. Once that energy bar gets filled, they just have to hold out for about 10 seconds, and Titan Keeper Hazrael will take care of the Blood Visages and end the boss fight. It looks like they're going to be able to survive this. It's very, very close, though. Anything could go wrong here.
You actually see Ricky throwing out off heals here, and they're just doing everything they can to survive this. It's very Ricky goes down. Ooh.
Just Femme and the 2 Rogues.
The ads are out.
Blood Visages are up.
They need to
Blood Visages are up. There's one blood visage down. There's the other one there. It looks like it's gonna get killed here. Here comes Titan Keeper Hazrel, finishing off the blood visage, and that's gonna do it. Fem
managed
and
to
Paint for
survive.
Fem.
Paint for Fem takes game 1.
What an absurd match! I cannot believe they managed to kill the last boss there with the healer down for fully half the fight on Tyrannical Quaking. Just an absurd performance from Paint for Fem.
Very close game there, but Paint for Fem do take the lead. Wow, the cam's working. There we go. There we are. Paint for Fem taking the victory and putting themselves into the final. Moose, what do you think they did that managed to get them so far ahead of Hula?
I think just right off the bat, they were just pulling bigger. That very first pull, they CC'd the priestess and pulled 3 groups instead of 2, and that alone immediately cut out an entire minute probably, where Hula and the Blowfish were obviously had to pull that separately. And just little things here and there, like the very first shroud, Hula's team sat there and waited for a couple seconds to safely go through, whereas Pain for Fem just immediately ran through and were just very careful not to splash each other. And then aside from that, I think they did a lot more chain pulling in the second boss room, Kragmaw's room. They pulled a lot more. I think they pulled a couple more at a time, and then they were very good about chain pulling. I don't think they dropped combat that entire room. I think they just chain pulled all the way. I think they might have dropped combat right before reaping to get a pot off or something, but I think they are just more efficient with the pulls. The pulls themselves were actually very similar in terms of what team pulled what, but yeah, I just think they were more efficient.
Yeah, the big differences we saw were where the teams chose to use their bloodlust, right? Hula and the Blowfish used their bloodlust on the first boss and the second boss, whereas Paint for Fem used their bloodlust on a huge trash pull right at the start of the dungeon, and then a reaping wave into the third boss. So those were 2 massive pulls with bloodlust, whereas Hula didn't really do any of those similar huge pulls.
They did do a very, very good job. Let's move into our second game now. Again, these episodes were chosen by you guys at home. I do want to stress that you really didn't hold out on this one, did you? You really felt like punishing our teams, even though they're doing a very nice thing for us doing this competition. Let's have a look at the dungeon now. So we see the Dagor plus 18. Fortified, Sanguine, Volcanic Reaping. What did these guys do to you, Force Rerollers and Got Global? Moofs, one thing I want to just talk about a little bit here. Got Global running the Prop Paladin here, meaning they do not have a full comp of Shadow Melders. Do you think this is going to be an advantage, a disadvantage? Do you think it's really going to affect them? What do you think they're going to be able to do with that?
They don't have the shadow meld, but it's not a huge deal. Most of the pulls that you do in Dagor, you usually have a tank pull something to the side so that other people can, move up ahead. And you ideally on Alliance, you don't have to do that. You can just run straight through and shadow meld. And so they might, obviously the tank's still going to have to do that because he does not have shadow meld. It will cost them a little time. I don't know how much time it will cost exactly. But yeah, I think it will hinder them a little since he is not running shadow meld, obviously.
Yeah, they're going to have to do death skips instead of meld skips for a couple of the skips that we see standard in Dagor, or maybe they have a strategy that doesn't even involve those standard skips that we've seen in this dungeon. But then they're going to get access to the powerful suite of protection paladin abilities, so we'll get to see what that adds to their strategy.
Yeah, so one of the other things I wanted to point out is that, God Globals are all Night Elves and have that Shadow Meld. Well, Shift and Sin are actually Dwarves. And obviously Rogues have Vanish, so they don't necessarily need to be that Night Elf. And Dwarf is much better. That Dwarf racial, the damage reduction and self-cleanse is much better on Rogues typically. Assuming that you save your Vanish for the particular skips and have that timing down.
Yeah, just the regular dwarf passive as well, the increased critical strike damage, ends up being the best DPS racial for outlaw rogues as well. So when they can get away without the shadow meld, when they can just use vanish to cover that completely, you'll often see rogues choosing to be dwarf for that DPS increase also.
So I say without further ado, we'll save a little bit of the racial talk for the dungeon itself. Otherwise, we will have nothing else to talk about. Let's jump into this game.
All right, so it is Tol Dagor here. The affixes Fortified, Sanguine, Volcanic, and Reaping. We do have Forced Rerollers up against Got Global tier. A bunch of familiar faces in this matchup. On a Fortified...
The Force Rerollers are essentially the Gamer Dads. They have renamed. I think they have a couple new faces, but the majority of the team is the Gamer Dads that you've seen in the past.
Yes, and here we are live for the game start. Now, one thing that we should mention is that this is a little bit different from live. We still have access on this match here, the Tournament Realm. This match, they still had access to the full force of the cannons without the limited shots. So this will be a fitting send-off to what ended up being such a dominant Tol Dagor strategy this season. We'll get to see them just mow down huge amounts of trash. But it looks like Got Global is going to start off here with a Lust Pull. They're going to pull 5 crabs, 1 crocodile, and 1 boss all together. And just prop Paladin, wow, going off here with the Avenger Shields. Doing some pretty huge damage, actually, is the Protection Paladin. Force Rerollers, meanwhile, looks like they're also engaged that boss and have fired off their Lust also. Okay.
Yeah, so something to note about, you already see a death coming out very early from Got Global. So they quickly use that battle res to get him up. One of the things that you need to be careful on this boss, so you see both teams immediately just pull all of the crabs and parasites into the boss right off the bat. And one of the things you really need to be careful about with the affixes is Sanguine, and you notice both teams use a Typhoon to push those mobs outside when they're about to die so that they do not drop Sanguine on the boss. So you still see the Sanguine puddles near the boss, and so they've got to be very careful. So Got Global pulls in these parasites. Again, they're going to drop Sanguine, and so they're going to have to be very careful when they decide to kill these.
Yes. Now we do... I wonder to what extent this Protection Paladin was a choice made for the purposes of Sanguine. With access to all these silences, you can really stop mobs from like standing and healing in Sanguine. So maybe that was part of the reason they decided to go off meta here and take that Prop Paladin in. Meanwhile, though, we do have Force Rerollers taking down this first boss, about 20% ahead of Got Global. Force Rerollers making their way through here. Looks like they're gonna, skip through the parasites in the start there. And this is really the kind of the time trial tech section of Tol Dagor. It's all about just who can get through this without killing anything, just executing the things that need to get executed. One thing that they'll be checking for is whether or not they can get easy access to the Battle Shout buff here in one of the side cages. A huge difference in Tol Dagor runs is whether or not teams have access to that Battle Shout, the huge extra attack speed or attack power. Looks like they did not get that. Or they chose to ignore it and just keep zipping on by here. Now they're going to shroud past this next part after melding off all that aggro from the start using Ring of Peace and Meld. And they're going to move into this first pull of the brig area, the second boss room, and they're pulling a bunch of trash. Meanwhile, Got Global just making their way into the prison itself now.
Yeah, so this pull from Force Rerollers is very, very big, and some of the things you need to watch out for. So you see Trell gets pretty low there.
Oh my goodness.
The Arsonists do a Throw Torch, which do a huge amount of initial damage, which is why you saw Trell dip so low. The other thing you need to watch out for is the Sea Speakers. They cast an ability called Watery Dome, which they just let off. If you can interrupt this, which typically you want to. If you do not interrupt it, so they're alliance, so they don't actually have the option to do it, but on Horde you can actually Arcane Torrent this. So they do not have any dispels or purges rather.
One of the weaknesses of this composition is a complete lack of offensive dispels. They don't have a priest or a shaman or any of the classes that can do that, and they don't have blood elves for Arcane Torrent. So Watery Dome is a must interrupt for them. Every time a Watery Dome gets cast, that's going to take 15 seconds off of their dungeon timer. So you'll see here Got Global are executing a slightly different strategy than the Gamer Dads did. They are getting some of the buffs here. Looks like, we have Thalmir here, moving around, sneaking around. A rogue can actually get all of these cages open by themselves. You see great Distract here coming out from Thalmir, and that is going to get access to all 4 of the powerful buffs here. Meanwhile, the team, it looks like their team is, the rest of the team of Got Global is currently fighting, so this is good use of their time here. They're just using 4 people to attack the rest of the dungeon, while Thalmir secures access to those buffs and is now going to rejoin the team here and help continue fighting through the mobs here. Force Rerollers, on the other hand, pulling the Warden. The Warden is an interesting mob in this dungeon. It is in combat with other enemies here, and it looks like they're going to try and kill the Warden without getting in combat with the other stuff that it's fighting is Force Rerollers in the bottom left small corner there. Meanwhile, though, Got Global fighting up against these Arsonists, having a little bit of Sanguine trouble here, running out of space. When these mobs die in the middle of a hallway, it can really start to be a problem with Sanguine, and they really have denied a lot of their own space here.
Yeah, one of the other very annoying things about Sanguine and Dagor is that on this floor, a lot of the mobs, the Arsonists and then the Sea Speakers and a couple of the other mobs, when they get to about 30% HP, they actually run away. And so it can be very frustrating depending on which direction they run. They can run through a Sanguine mob and then come back through a Sanguine mob. And so that alone can be extremely frustrating. So things like Ring of Peace, stuns, and stuff when they get low can help immensely to limit the healing and amount, the time it takes to kill these.
And the rerollers have access to Ring of Peace and Typhoon, whereas Got Global has elected to not play a monk here, so they do not have access to Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace very, very strong against Sanguine, but Got Global does have access to Avenger Shield, which is going to get them a lot of ability to move the Sea Speakers that the rerollers might not have, so maybe that'll end up being balanced out. I do think, though, and they also have Chaos Nova and stuff, so that they have some mob control in their composition, but I think it's fair to say that they have a little bit less than the Ring of Peace would provide.
Yeah,
the rerollers
so
now,
one of the things you want to be careful on in this current mob that the Force Rerollers are on is where you drop the Sanguine, because immediately after you're pulling Just Howless, and at 70%, Just Howless runs around and starts opening cages. Well, if you drop a Sanguine where he's opening the cages, you're actually going to heal the boss. And so you have to be very careful about where you place these, and I think they place them in pretty good spots for the most part.
Yes, so Jess Howless is one of these bosses where there are a couple of affixes that aren't normally all that relevant on boss fights. Sanguine, not something you see mattering on a lot of boss fights. Volcanic is also an affix that you don't see mattering on a lot of boss fights, but one thing that I've seen wipe groups is the Jess Howless. When he gets to 70%, he stuns everybody here, and if they're out at range and it's a volcano that spawns under everybody, it can actually be pretty problematic here. It looks like they're all going to be in melee range, though, so that is not going to be something they have to worry about right now. But yeah, you can see the boss is in fact healing from that Sanguine there. Does get a couple of percent onto its health pool there. That's definitely something that Force Rerollers would have wanted to avoid if they could have. But it's not the end of the world. This is a fortified setting, so the boss fight will not last too long, even with a little bit of extra health added from the Sanguine pools. And you can see they're pulling all these Raiders in from the cages. These Raiders will not drop Sanguine as they were opened by the boss. They would have, though, if they were opened by the team before engaging the boss fight. A little interesting behavior on those mobs there. Meanwhile,
Got Global has also started on Just Howless. They're not too far behind Force Rerollers. It seems that their Sanguine placement was a little better. I think that he got healed much at all. So he's walking over, opening the cage, and then they're pretty much in the same spot right now. This is a very close match so far.
Yeah, this is they've really caught up here. Has Got Global? They're only a little bit of percent on the boss behind, and Got Global has access to 4 very powerful buffs. They have all the buffs from the mobs that they freed in those cages, those prisoners, whereas the Force Rerollers do not have access to that. So that's going to be a pretty powerful effect that will keep speeding them up as this dungeon goes on. They do have a little bit less mob count, but very similar actually on the enemy forces meter between both teams here. Okay, they're gonna. It looks like they're just gonna tank the flashing daggers there. I didn't know you could survive that on this fortified.
It is fortified, but very ballsy of them.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. And this is a great fight for Prop Paladin as well. A bunch of silences, free silences that can interrupt some of these effects here, and make it so that you don't really have to coordinate a bunch of difficult interrupts. Also, Got Global has this advantage of the Havoc Demon Hunter. Havoc Demon Hunter is going to make the last boss fight way easier for them than it will be for Force Rerollers, because they'll be able to dodge all of the Deadeyes with the Blade Dance ability of Psycho, the Havoc Demon Hunter. So really, I think Got Global there are a lot of factors here that mean even though they've killed this boss a few seconds behind the Force Rerollers, if they execute this well, they might be able to actually make a bunch of time up with the unique benefits of their Demon Hunter. Force Rerollers, though, on the cannon.
Force Rerollers has executed their final skip. They shrouded, or they didn't even shroud. I'm sorry, rather they ran up ahead and all shadow melded, and then immediately they pull all this stuff to the cannon. And like we said earlier, this is pre-nerf cannons where you can fire as many times as your heart desires. So they are hammering away at these Marines, and they are about to spawn Reaping right here.
Yeah, this is going to be a Reaping Wave. Reaping Waves do, of course, get murdered by the cannons. Cannon just 2-shot the Reaping. Trell here dancing around here, trying to not get killed by his own team, although we'll see what happens. That's the kind of thing that happens pretty often in the cannon area, and looks like they're just going to AoE down the Reaping, wait for everything to come together, and Cynic, who is in the cannon, Cynic is the cannoneer of the rerollers, is just shooting now down at the next pack. There's a lot of sanguine management going on here. They're going to be using these cannons for the next couple minutes, so placing good sanguine pools and then waiting for the bad ones to expire is going to be a large part of these teams' strategies. You can see Got Global is also now on the cannon segment, so it'll be, Sistara goes down, Cynic, man down, friendly fire there, takes down Sistara, does get a B-res, it looks like is not going to take the B-res though, this is good play, okay, no, it does take the B-res. It looked like they were considering waiting and dropping combat to get an out-of-combat res, but they've decided to just use the B-res and not bother waiting around for that, or maybe Sistara released even.
I wanted to point out real quick, one of the things that Force Rerollers did to conserve time is that, so as we know, Reaping is pretty inconsequential, and it's not really worth using cannon shots to kill the Reaping. Instead, Trell and everyone else that's basically AFK while Sin is doing the cannons were killing the Reaping, while Sin was actually pulling actual mobs off to the right. And so that's a huge way to optimize time, as opposed to killing Reaping and then killing other mobs.
Trell nearly goes down there, has to fire off Shield Wall and a bunch of defensives against those casts coming out from all these mobs they've pulled here. Once again, we have another Reaping move out. Handcuff is being channeled, though, on Hunte, and so he is completely silenced there in that bear form, really unable to do anything. Needs some help from his friends to break the silence there. It looks like Trell's just going to get some threat and run away from these mobs and just move so that to the next cannon. All right, so Shift now is in the cannon. The second one, so Cynic and Shift are both cannoneers now, both the rogues. The reason we see these rogues in the cannons is that Tricks of the Trade has a fun interaction with the cannons where it stays active the entire time. So all of the threat that rogues do in their cannons can be redirected to the tank. All they have to do is jump out every 30 seconds and refresh their tricks. And it'll stay going the whole time. But yeah, you'll see another Reaping wave spawn now, just back-to-back Reaping. The sky had barely turned regular again before it turned blue again. For these Reaping waves. Force Rerollers just making very short work here. Meanwhile, Got Global is also making good time through the cannon area. They're also doing well. 69% on the enemy forces meter, as they are about 20% of mob count behind. A little bit of a sanguine problem here, though. They have a lethal...
Placement was a little sketch, but...
I describe that as a moat that is stopping them from moving in and out of this prison here. But they do eventually decide to just get on through there, and they're going to pull the next stuff and run back out again. You see their Felinator getting on and off their little Elec with the whatever steed ability it is that Protection Paladins have to get on that mount, Divine Steed. Drops a consecration over there. Awesome stuff. You do love to see these classes that we don't normally get to see. And it looks like, they actually have done a great job of grouping up all these mobs here. Almost all of them dying simultaneously. Almost all of them on the same health there. But the rerollers have engaged the third boss, Got Globaled here. Triggers the fourth Reaping wave. So they're going to kill off this Reaping wave. And then presumably they'll be moving on to the boss as well. So they're going to have some time that they're going to need to make up with faster boss kills. And one thing is, even though we were talking about how their composition might be a little bit better for killing the last boss safely, it's unclear how much faster they'll be at killing it. So they may still be in some trouble here. They may need to do something big to make up time here against the rerollers.
I'm really liking these line of feasts that have gone down for Got Globaled. It's definitely helping them progress further in the instant.
Yeah, it's important to be well fed, to eat a balanced and nutritious breakfast before coming into the tournament realm. But sometimes you realize that you're in the middle of your dungeon and you haven't had your balanced and nutritious breakfast yet. So you go and just grab a quick little pick me up from those feasts. But Got Globaled has now done that. They're well fed, and they are pulling Knight Captain Valerie. Force Rerollers though about 70% ahead on the Knight Captain, and Force Rerollers have access to the spell reflection ability to reflect back her dot onto Knight Captain itself. One of the really cool things about this composition, the Prot Warrior, the two rogues, the Monk, and the Druid, is that anybody who gets targeted besides Hunte can reflect the thing back onto Knight Captain. The two rogues can vanish it away, so it'll recast the ignition, or the fuse lighter rather, and Sistara can send it back with the old diffuse magic. So 4 of the 5 targets basically will either re-roll who's being targeted or target the boss with that dot and make up a little bit of extra time for them. And they've killed the boss. They're going on now to the final trash section here. Let's see how they choose to handle this. Looks like they're going to want to skip. They blinded the Warden. Yeah, so they're probably going to run through and drop a Ring of Peace and then meld on the other side. That's what I would expect to see
they're
here.
pulling all this. I think they're pulling it just to... Ooh, and Trell goes down. I think
that looks like that was Sistara taken out.
That was Sistara getting some revenge for earlier.
Yeah, that's brutal. Okay, so I see what their strategy is going to be here. They're going to kill these 4 mobs, and that's not going to be quite enough to trigger the last Reaping Wave. And they have that blinded Warden over there. They're just going to meld it off, and then they're going to come back and kill it after they deal with the last boss, and that's going to skip a Reaping Wave for them.
So I think what they might be doing instead is, I think they're in combat with this final mob, and when the blind expires, he'll actually walk up to them at the end, and you can just CC it when you're ready to kill it, and just pull it in and kill it with the last boss, instead of running down to the cannon afterwards, which is what a lot of teams in the NDI did. Let's see if they do that.
Yeah. Absolutely looks like what they're up to. Yeah, great catch. Meanwhile, Got Global is making their way to the last area as well, to the final boss encounter. But Force Rerollers, it looks like it's going to be their game to lose here. One of the nice things about this comp as well is that these Outlaw Rogues with their extremely long arms can stand in some unique places and still deal damage to this boss. But the Force Rerollers have an extra element of management that they have to do on this fight with the Deadeye stacks and the extra damage coming out from the Deadeyes that Got Global can completely negate with their Blade Dance on Psycho, the Demon Hunter. The Rerollers here taking quite a bit of damage here, a lot of back-to-back combinations of the explosion coming out. There's a little bit of randomness to this boss fight's abilities, and it does a lot more damage if it chooses to do that ability twice in a row, which it looked like it did a couple times there for the Rerollers. Luckily, on an 18 Fortified, it's not going to be too lethal, but if this key were Tyrannical or a couple levels higher, that would start to really tax Hunte's cooldowns and mana.
Yeah, so like we said earlier, the Demon Hunter does give Got Global an added advantage with the Deadeyes. It's not a huge deal for Forced Rerollers if you're properly rotating who soaks which Deadeye. It's not that big of a deal in terms of time saved. It is safer, obviously, but if you look at it on the flip side, it's actually a DPS loss for Demon Hunters to save their Blade Dance to do that every time. And so ideally they don't want to do that, because you do lose casts of Blade Dance by saving it.
Yeah, they do also have Bubble and Bop, which also work against the Deadeye very effectively. So they may choose to use that and let Psycho just continue to Death Sweep and Blade Dance on cooldown. It does look like, though, the Rerollers have taken care of the last boss, and they just need to go and take care of the last mob in the dungeon. Sistar pre-Transcendence, set a Transcendence downstairs, and has activated that to get back and pull the mob as quickly as possible. So it looks like they did end up resetting it, and they are going to kill it here with this cannon.
Clearly don't have big enough brains for my strat earlier.
No, they do not. But they do have big enough brains to take home the win here. 17 minutes and 41 seconds, very fast, Dagor, coming out from the Rerollers. Insane gameplay all around, though, and a great match.
So as I say, the Force Rerollers do take that game, earning themselves a place in our final, and unfortunately sending the other team down into the lower bracket, but no need to worry, we will see that very soon. Dratnos, whilst I set up the next game, can you talk a little bit about that prop paladin pick? We weren't necessarily that sure about it at the beginning. Last boss, it was quite nice. First boss was quite nice. What do you make of it overall as a player?
Yeah, it actually looks pretty compelling. I liked the extra control that it gave with Avenger's Shield against the Sanguine. Casters stuck in Sanguine can be a little bit of a nightmare. There's no way to get in close to them sometimes and interrupt them, but Avenger's Shield being this ranged kick that is just available so often may have saved them some time. And you saw they made up time coming into the second boss area. But because of the fact that Paladins can't be Night Elves, they ended up not having access to Shadow Meld skips in the same way that the Rerollers did. So I think that cost them quite a bit of time over the course of the dungeon. And I think the Protection Warrior probably, I didn't actually get a good look at the damage meters, but I expect that with the combination of the Spell Reflex on the Salt Blasts and stuff, the Protection Warrior was competitive or higher on damage overall. We didn't actually get to see the last boss from Got Globaled. They may have made up time there, though, at the end of the day with all the other benefits, right? That the Prop Paladin and the Havoc Demon Hunter brought. But I think that the place where Forced Rerollers, Ring of Peace, and Shadow Meld shined was getting to that cannon area much more quickly. They probably took a minute less to set up the cannon area, with the access to the Ring of Peace and the Shadow Meld, and just YOLOing, running through. And the God Global did not have access to that because of their choice.
Moose, what did you make about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, there are a couple things, obviously Prout Warrior damage, and then Outlaw Rogue damage versus Havoc Demon Hunter damage is a little thing, and then I think Force Rerollers handled the cannons a little better, where they placed the Sanguine, what they were killing with Reaping, when they procced it, so forth. But I think the big thing, like Drano said, is the Shroud, the Shadow Meld skip rather, not the Shroud, and just being able to just go straight through Shadow Meld as opposed to pulling something to the side or having someone die and rezzing them, whatever. That alone probably saved them a good 30-40 seconds.
Yeah, and there were a couple of instances of those skips being executed at different points there. We also saw a different choice. The God Global decided to get access to all 4 of the buffs from the cells, whereas the rerollers just didn't bother at all. I don't think they even looked and saw if they had a good buff available. They were just like, we're going through here in 0 seconds. And we're getting to the other side. And that ended up working out pretty well for them. Sub 18 minutes in Toldagor. Very impressive time from the rerollers. Good set of affixes for the dungeon, though. And anytime it's fortified in Toldagor, you're usually pretty happy. And neither Sanguine nor Volcanic are too bad. Sanguine added some minutes to the clock, but there are a lot of affixes that could have done similar time adding. So
Indeed, I was rather concerned about the affixes that you guys chose for them, but they handled them very well. Let's take a look at our bracket. Pain Fam winning their game and going through into our best of 3. Force Rerollers winning their game there. Hula and the Blowfish and Got Global sadly going down into our lower bracket, which we will take a little look at now. So, the lower bracket. The comps in the lower bracket. I feel like it is my duty as the host to warn you guys about one of these comps. Is it slightly what's the word I want to use? Unusual. So I will put it out there. They don't have a Prout Warrior. You might go, okay, well, that's fine. Felinator, he was playing Paladin. That's not too bad. They don't have a Resto Druid. I know. This is where it gets spicy. They don't have a Windwalker or a Rogue. I'm just gonna let that sit in the air for a moment. We are gonna take a look at that comp right now. Hula and the Blowfish. I love this. I absolutely love this. Hito on the Vengeance Demon Hunter, Zuli on the Disc Priest, Hula repping the Rep Paladin, Woes and Doos coming in with that double Frost combination. This is very off meta.
This is great here.
Very off meta, should we say.
Most teams don't have access to any Frost here, but Hula actually has 2 different Frost specs. That is infinite times as much Frost as we usually see coming out of these teams. This is a fantastic comp. I'm really looking forward to what they can do here. This is the winner in my heart.
I'm wondering if this is a purposefully meme comp, or if this is actually... I know Hula does play Paladin. I'm not too sure about the others, but yeah, I'm sort of wondering if this is, if these are classes that they actually play competitively. And
yeah, check out this combo. All right, the Vengeance Demon Hunter, right, is a pretty squishy tank. But if they ever get in trouble and need to get pulled out, they have a priest to life grip them away. So that's a very powerful combo there between
awesome
Zuli and Hito. Right there. Yeah.
I mean, okay, here's the one thing about this comp, right? I mean, we can sit here, we can say it's a little bit meme-y. Sure, I think the phrase I would use is off-meta, maybe, to be slightly more polite than meme-y. However, if you think about it, right, okay, Disc Priest weakness, right, single target, it's not fantastic. It's not terrible at single target, it's also not fantastic. Vengeance Demon Hunters do tend to take a lot more damage and need a lot more focused healing. However, Hula comes in with the Word of Glory, giving Zuli that opportunity to just focus on the tank. It might not be the best combination, but it as a comp actually does work very well together for maybe what they're planning on doing. One thing I want to pick up again, which we had this in the last game, Fel still sticking to the Paladin, doesn't have the option to Shadow Meld. Hula and the Blowfish now doing the same thing. They're bringing that Paladin. They don't have access to the Night Elf on that class. Do we think that is going to be a disadvantage for them here, or do they not really? Do they not care? Do they not care at this point?
Yeah, so neither team here has access to a full Shadow Meld skip. God Global does have the Resto Druid to stealth and Masters everybody on the other side if they want to do some kind of death skip. But I would expect neither team is planning to use a big Shadow Meld anywhere in this dungeon, given these compositions here.
Yeah, and really, so the Dungeons of Talazar, really the only skip that you need is typically on the right side when you're going towards the second boss. You usually shroud past all of that stuff, or in this case, they'll probably have Wade stealth up ahead and res everyone. And then you can do some skips, like you can shroud past some of the what are called the not the swarmers, the small dudes.
Yeah, the toxic swords.
The swords, there you go. Yeah, you can do some shrouds with the swords and set some snaps up and stuff like that, but I don't think they're going to be doing any of that stuff. So
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of big pulls here. There's a lot of burstiness, particularly okay from Hula and the Blowfish, right? They have huge Rat Paladin wings burst, and they have the Frost Death Knight with the Frost Breath, the Syndragosa's Fury or whatever, the big dragon once every couple minutes. So if they can line up all their cooldowns along with Dukes' Icy Veins, they can just run in there, pull huge. One thing that Hula and the Blowfish has access to when they pull huge as well is they have a lay on hands and a bop and that kind of stuff. So Hula has these extremely powerful defensive abilities that might be able to cover Zuli's lack of, like, outside of pain suppression, lack of ability to keep up a tank through a huge pull. But if they only do that once every couple minutes, just when everybody's cooldowns are all up, they might be able to just incinerate some packs. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this comp can do here.
So I think we have spoken about this in great detail. Let's have a little look at how they actually managed to play with this comp. I'm very excited to see this. Let me get the game going here, and we shall, if it's going to play at the right time. We're going to switch over in a second. There we go. We are going to start the game. A Talzar plus 18. I'm really looking forward to this comp. I know we say it's a bit memey, but genuinely, I'm just loving the whole idea of what's about to happen. What I really want to see from these two teams is they're not necessarily playing what we would all consider to be, the best, quote-unquote, classes, but I really want to know what they are actually able to do with them. As I say, when we're looking at the Hula comp, I'm really thinking that the Word of Glory is going to be able to help carry the Disc Priest there and allow the Disc Priest to do a huge amount of damage. And on Global side, that Paladin, they have a lot of extra interrupts with that Avenger Shield. So I'm thinking maybe a couple of extra Skyscreamers, something like that. Maybe some big ones there.
It's unclear how many extra kicks you can actually pull at once with the Okay, the Prop Paladin does a really good job of locking down something like an Augur and stopping it from doing any wildfire casts, but doesn't necessarily do a good job of kicking two things simultaneously. It can, but I'm not sure that's what they're going to want to do with the comp. I don't know how many extra kicks it lets them pull at once. Got Global though going to start off here with the old left side standard. Meanwhile, Hula and the Blowfish have a different idea for what they're going to do here. They're going right into Razan. At the start. I wonder which of these strategies is going to work out better for them. What do you think between these two pulls here, Sarah?
It's very interesting. Both teams popping Bloodlust. It's difficult to say. I think I prefer what Hula are doing, to be honest. They're playing into the strength. They have a lot of single target, especially from that Disc Priest as well. They're going to be popping Bloodlust, going straight onto the boss. The thing we're talking about with Got Global about the Paladin, I was really expecting them to pull the 6-pack and the 3. They chose to split them up. I don't know why they chose to do that. They have the Paladin. They have the power to do it. They easily could have taken that off. They're going to go down to... no, they're not going to go down to Rezan now. Interesting. They're going to get a little bit more trash done. Showing off the old... what do we call them? Snap spots. The snap spots.
There it is.
Again,
with Quaking active. Nearly takes down much of the group here, actually, that Quake does. But they're going to survive. So the actives is we have Quaking, we have Bolstering, and we have Tyrannical. As well as of course Reaping. And speaking of Reaping, here we have the first Reaping wave being pulled over to these two Skyscreamers. This is a standard set of mobs that you can pretty easily pull with this Reaping wave. And they have access to the left side line of sight here that they can use to group up all of the Tormented Soul casters at once here. Meanwhile, Hula and the Blowfish still just working on Razan here. I think one thing about their comp that we didn't mention is that they have access to a real Bloodlust. They have Time Warp from Dukes on the Mage. So their lust is a little bit stronger than the drums from Got Global. So that's going to be a little bit more haste for them. And haste, of course, good for pretty much everybody on single target. So using it like they are on a boss fight, that's going to maybe get them a little bit more efficiency, a little bit more value from that. It looks like Dude's just going to go ahead and invis off the Pursuit there. Teams are generally not going to let Pursuit go off. Pretty much everybody has access to Shadow Meld or Vanish or something. And they also have bops on both teams if somebody does get eaten. So they can really manage this boss without having to actually kite ever. Both teams can. and that's going to let them kill it a little bit more quickly here. Here we see the damage, though. Everybody on this comp actually doing pretty high single target damage. Everybody above the 20k mark. Each of these 3 specs here. They have access to whatever set of traits they want, so you may see some difficult to obtain set of traits and stuff on your Azerite that might be hard to get on live, but is possible on the tournament realm, and that might let them do some really cool stuff with these off-meta specs here.
Now, we meme the comp a little bit. Honestly, I'm really liking the synergy they have. Like I say, they have the Bloodlust, the full Bloodlust from the Mage. They do have the full Intellect buff from the Mage as well. The DH is going to be putting on that Magic Taken Increase buff. Woe dropping very, very low here. These packs can be very, very deadly on, even if it's not a fortified setting, they need to be very, very careful here. One thing that Dispriest can offer here, actually, they have Barrier, they have Rapture, they have the ability to stop people taking as much damage from these packs. I'm just trying to figure out what Hula are actually going for. Where are they going?
The Dispriest is phenomenal at healing these pulls, provided there is still a Sky Screamer up as everything is dying. What they struggle at is if you pull only swords and one of the swords dies, and that was the one that they were like throwing their penance at to heal everybody up with, that ends up being a pretty big problem. But leaving the Sky Screamer alive until towards the end of the pack means that they have something to keep Atonement healing off of, and that works really nicely in these Sky Screamer pulls in this dungeon. So they're actually very good at that.
We're getting very hard on these pulls, though. Very, very, very hard. Hula are going to go up and do this left-hand pull, which we saw Global do at the beginning. See how much they're going to go for here. They might play it a little bit reserved.
Very slow pull, yeah.
Maybe they have a route which we don't quite know about. You know, looking towards the right hand side, they don't have that rogue on their side. So what Got Global are doing now, I'm assuming, yep, they're going to be able to go through the Shroud. They're going to go straight through this. Hula aren't going to be able to do this. They do have a couple of options. They've got Invis. They do have Shadowmeld, but obviously. Hula does not.
They would have to sacrifice Hula, to execute a meld skip.
There's a couple things they could do. They could do Tank Death. Maybe we'll see that one. Not very efficient in a speedrun. Maybe they could do Mage Invis as well. There are a couple of options they have. We're just going to have to see when they get there what they do decide to do. Got Global have pulled Volkal here. One thing that isn't so nice for Dispriests on this one is how spread out everybody is. You can just see here looking at the frames. There are 2 people out of range just with Fel on this one totem. For the Dispriest, that can be kind of rough. You know, if you're trying to spread your radiance, get your atonement on everybody, especially with quaking as well, it can be a little bit tough for them to do that. But they're running around. He's managing to get everybody up. Psycho's struggling a little bit.
Yeah,
it's not enough that he's actually going to die.
Once we get to Hula here, we'll get to see how the Dispriest handles this fight. But they do have the Resto Druid on Got Global, keeping everybody up, it looks like, for now in this fight. This fight on Tyrannical has received some changes on live that were not here yet at the time that this was recorded. So the boss fight will be over in about a minute for Got Global. Meanwhile, Hula and the Blowfish have triggered a Reaping Wave, and they're pulling it with this Reanimated Honor Guard and 2 Stalkers. Okay.
He's actually taking quite a bit of damage here. Hula dropping low. I think Hito's in trouble as well. This is not very good for them. Woe is going down. I'm not sure if that was a combination of the quaking. It didn't look like the Honor Guard actually got taunted off. Hito's still dropping very, very low. Woe deciding whether he wants to release or not. He is going to do that. I think they might have stabled the pull out now. I think they're okay. But if you look at the HPS meters here, this is what I was talking about. Hula is absolutely backing Zuli up with those Word of Glories. Hito as well pulling a large amount of HPS out. Feels like they're fairly... Hito's still dropping very low. They're not managing to get his HPS up. But I think they're okay at this point. I think they've managed to recover it.
Yeah, I think that, okay, one weakness with these affixes that their composition has is Dispriest suffers from not having too many great heals at instant speed. So when a Quake comes out, there really aren't that many buttons they can press that can be effective globals during that Quake. Whereas Resto Druid does have, rejuves and stuff that they can be throwing out as instant casts. So if we see a bad Quake overlap, I think it will be all the more deadly to Hula and the Blowfish than it would be to perhaps Got Globaled.
So here I'm curious to see, this is what we were sort of alluding to earlier. Got Global just killed their boss. Hula did that really small pull on the left-hand side. I think this is why. I think this is kind of what I was expecting, is that they are going to pull one of these packs. I'm hoping they don't pull both, because this is going to be extremely rough for a Dispriest, even on Tyrannical. This is not a nice pack to pull. It's one of those packs where, you want to get the barrier down straight away to get it off cooldown. You end up needing to use Rapture because the damage from these Honor Guards can be absolutely massive. Woe's already taken... one, I think Woe retook. I didn't see them take it. I think Woe retook the one in the first pack. So they are going to have to
they have a friendly Honor Guard on their side, helping to kill stuff here. do you have to be careful with that one? One fun thing that can happen with bolstering is if your mind control falls off at the wrong time and a bolster stack goes on that honor guard, it will no longer be remind controllable. So that's something that they're going to have to keep close watch on and make sure they're getting their remind controls every few minutes on that enemy. But yeah, here we get to see how Hula executes this. It looks like it's going to be a skip. The skip is being executed by the healer. It looks like no. It's a tank deck. Okay, it's a tank deck. Yeah.
So that is slightly inefficient. Like we were saying earlier, the one thing that I'm slightly concerned about, I think we saw this in the Underrot as well with Hula. That game had quaking. This game also has quaking. You can get caught as a healer where you try and mass res somebody, and that quaking comes out. Not sure what's happened there. The tank has actually gone into the room.
No,
the boss has been pulled as well. I don't.
He's gonna have to reset the boss.
Yeah,
they do successfully reset it. Whew.
They've managed to recover this. They're going to get the mass res off again. And quaking has come in just as they start the mass res. I hate it when this happens to me, and there is absolutely nothing that you can do about it. You have to sit there and wait as God Global takes this opportunity to pull slightly ahead. We were so focused on Hula and the Blowfish there. God Global did this really nice pull where they CC'd the two Sky Screamers. They got the swords, and they actually used the snap spot, which I don't think I've seen many people use before. Just get those out of the way, get them down, and they are now pulling Rezan. This is the point in the dungeon where, we've had a couple of different routes. This is the first point, I'd say, we're getting a rough idea of where everybody is. They've both killed a boss. They've had time to do some trash now. But by the end of this boss, we'll know 100% where the two teams are because they'll have killed the same bosses. Let me see. Got Global 65% trash. Hula 30% trash. Yeah, there's about a 30% difference on the trash here, but overall, I wouldn't say this is massively one-sided, but Hula are going to need to do something pretty substantial if they do want to catch up.
Yeah, it's I would say God Global is ahead by a little bit here, but I think it's fair to say that Hula and the Blowfish might have a higher single target DPS comp. One thing that is nice about the Disc Priest is that they bring a pretty effective amount of single target damage to bosses without actually sacrificing any healing at the same time. So we may see that end up causing them to gain a little bit of time on these bosses like Yasma at the end of the dungeon. Whereas God Global may take a little bit longer to kill those, particularly if they don't get good stuff to pull onto bosses. I do expect both teams are going to pull a lot of trash onto Alunza, the third boss. So that one will probably take the same amount of time for both teams. They'll just die during the second transfusion or maybe the third.
I would love to see them do that, however, it is bolstering, so they might not pull the raw trash onto it, but they're probably going to get the reaping. I would love to see them pull it onto Alunza and just bolster the absolute
Okay, no, check this out. Check this out. Right.
Terrible.
Hula and the Blowfish, they have Shining Force, so they can just get everything low and then Shining Force it far away, and then bolstering played around with the Disc Priest.
I mean, yeah, I believe bolstering does only apply within 30 yards, 40 yards, and the Shining Force hits like an absolute truck, so, I mean, I wouldn't say that that's not going to happen. I'm also not going to place any money on it happening, but I guess we'll have to see. Taking a little check in Hula and the Blowfish here on Volkal. They are down to around about the 30% mark. Got Globals. Yeah, they got a little bit less on their boss. So at this point, I think we can safely say Got Global are slightly ahead. What I do want to know about is how Hula and the Blowfish are going to get out. So we saw they didn't really want to commit the Invis pot, otherwise they would have done that on the way in. They can't. Well, I mean, they can do the Shadow Meld. Just trying to backtrack to where they've gone through. Maybe Hula could die and just release and run straight forward. Just through into the middle and do a little meet-up at the sides thing. Again, not massively efficient. Personally, I'd love to see the Mage play here. I'd love to see the Mage come in, take them a blink away, and Invis. We are going to get the tank doing it again. Again, same thing, quaking, 5 seconds of the death timer. Not a massive fan of this, but it is going to work for them.
They could meld here. They could, like, Hula could meld, right? Hula's playing Night Elf.
Hula's playing Paladin, so Hula can't.
Oh, yeah.
It's the one.
Their tank, right? Their tank could. I was thinking, they're okay, but they do decide to use the death on Hula, the tank. Okay.
It's the one weakness in this otherwise flawless comp, in my opinion.
I was thinking of their tank, not Hula, the Ret Paladin. Okay. They are going to move in, though. Sigil of Chains, grabbing all of these mobs together on the start of the pull for Hula and the Blowfish. Adding in the Stalkers now. Sigil of Silence. Wow, the Silence Sigil. Extremely effective, actually, against these casters here. What a powerful piece of utility here. They are going to have to handle these two shields, though, and the hexes are going off, and they don't have it. It doesn't look like they have a good amount of AoE interaction for that, that barrier, the soul barrier from the shield bearers. Unclear exactly what they're supposed to do to that. With this comp, they might have to single target stun both the targets. I don't think they have any AoE stuns in their group, so That is going to be a problem here. These bulwarks of Juju. And looks like they're just going to have to let them full channel. Okay,
We
so
do see
I think we might have identified another
actually
weakness.
just gone down. The tank has just gone down. They're just about to get the reaping in, but they do manage to get the res off. Hula dropping very, very low as well. I think all the cooldowns used by the Disc Priest. Hula is going to go down. Woe dropping very low. Woe goes down as well. At this point, I think, yeah, they've just triggered the reaping as well. The reaping is going to come in. They've got these monsters they haven't finished off. The honor guard's spewing everywhere. At this point, I think the only thing they can do is run. I think they do just have to run away, get around the corner, try and meet up. The healer's going down. I think at this point it's going to have
Somebody needs to open that gate, though. If they don't open that gate, it's going to be a disaster, and they're not going to be able to get that'll keep the other gate on the other side closed. And it looks like they're going to have to backtrack around this way. If they'd been able to open that gate, they could have come through the middle of the dungeon, which maybe they were able to do. It looks like they're having a little bit of a strategy session, trying to figure out exactly what the play is going to be from here. It's always difficult in these kind of spots when you have this sort of wipe, and it looks like they've got a lost soul that is straggling around from earlier. Yeah. Another problem when you wipe while fighting a reaping wave is you end up kind of having to pick up the reaping wave piecemeal rather than all at once, and that will add further time to the dungeon. But it looks like they've identified their friendly reanimated honor guard, regaining control of that.
The full squad is back together.
All those mobs. Yeah, and everybody's recovered. They're going to take care of this reaping wave. They got rid of most of the mobs down there, so that this shouldn't cost them too much time. But Got Global is going like a train through this dungeon on the other side now. Taking care of the trash pull before Priestess of Lunza, and they're nearly done with their enemy forces count. So, Got Globaled here, way ahead at this point. Hula and the Blowfish making their way back down the stairs here. Let's see what mobs they have left to kill. Yeah, making their way downtown, absolutely. And it looks like it's mostly just reaping for them to clean up. Okay, so it's not a disaster case for them.
I'm just looking at Global's trash count here.
Reset.
Are they going to proc reaping on this? Is this going to be the 100% reaping, or are they going to have a little bit left? I think it's going to proc that 100% reaping. If it is, they're probably going to take it onto the boss. This could be a good candidate for their Bloodlust. They only really have two choices left, because obviously they're not going to pull the middle. Yep, they are 100% on count. They are going to pull it into the boss. Will they Bloodlust this? They don't necessarily need to, but it's either going to be this one or the final boss.
I think I would save the Bloodlust for the final boss, because Bloodlust isn't going to save any time here. It's just going to make this more safe. This boss is going to die on her transfusion cast, the same cast either way, regardless of whether or not you use the Bloodlust. So the only thing that the Bloodlust would do would make it so that they could survive the Reaping Wave more easily. And I think that they're instead going to elect to use it to shave 15 seconds or whatever off of Yasma. And yes, that is exactly what Got Global is going to do. They're going to take care. They're going to kill the Spirit of Gold here, and the other one looks like they're going to leave CC'd. Yeah, so they don't actually have access to a bunch of CC for Spirits of Gold. They only really have an Entangling Roots. So, oh no, they have Blinds as well. Okay, so yeah, they can CC all the Spirits of Golds if they choose to. But it looks like they were just going to let one of them go through and kill it manually.
A neat thing that Wade can do actually as well is if he takes Mass Entanglement, he can do all of these. He can just completely solo them. He can, I think the pattern is you solo route one with a single route, and then just from that point on, you can just mass route them, and then they are completely done. But that does take him a lot of his focus away from the boss. But I mean, just looking at the HP, he doesn't even need to be focusing on it. They have just destroyed this boss. It has gone down so quickly for them, even without the Bloodlust. You are right, that's completely unnecessary. They're going to be able to save that for the final boss. Hula having a bit of fun with these Sky Screamers here. You know, it is bolstering. I think they are pulling those in with the swords as well. It's one of the things that Got Global have done throughout this entire dungeon. I really love the strat. They've got the Toxic Saurids, they've grouped them out together away from the Sky Screamers, dealt with them, and then pulled the Sky Screamers in on their own and dealt with those. They are just about to finish the boss here. I think Psycho's just run off. He's done. He's gone. He's not bothered about this. He's going to go and start the roleplay.
That's great play, yeah. Once that boss is going to die at the same second either way off of that transfusion cast, so there's no reason to stick around. And for at least one of them, they should run and start this next RP a couple seconds earlier, because that is what they'll be waiting on next. So great play from Got Global here.
One thing I do have to point out, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Fel just popped Ardent Defender to run through the fire. I am not a fan of that play, Fel. That is a very bad usage of your cooldowns. You can wait for a few seconds and go through it safely. You don't need to be doing that. You won't have that for the boss now, but I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. He's actually doing very well surviving on this without the assistance of spamming all of his defensives, quaking on the pull here, which isn't very fun for the healer to deal with. They're going to have to throw the hots out instead of DPSing. We are going to get the F-low down just to make sure that everybody gets topped off very nicely. Where Hula's dropping very low. Again, it's these pull with Sky Screamers and Toxic Saurids. The Disc Priests, I feel like I'd like to see more barriers. I feel like that's maybe the things that's missing on these. Rotate the barriers on these, and then you will just stop like Cooler and Woe dropping Giga low. Aside from that, I think doing very well.
Yeah, I think Barrier is an excellent cooldown to be making use of on some of these Sword Bulls. Meanwhile, Got Global, though, they're fighting that last boss here. Let's see what Hula does here. 67% on enemy forces, so Reaping Wave is not close. It looks like they're just going to start here. Yeah, these mobs are not even going to trigger a Reaping Wave, so they're just going to kill these off individually and move on up to the Alunza trash. Got Global, though, doing their little circle around the room. They're taking these Soul Rends pretty close to the boss, so that might be an opportunity for them to wipe, would be if one of those spirits made it to Yasma. But it looks like that they're going to do a pretty good job of just bursting those down, keeping them easily under control with their suite of abilities like Chaos Nova to do just that. Hula and the Blowfish, though, taking care of these mobs here, doing a good job. Okay, pretty good job of playing around Bolstering here. It's okay if the Honor Guards live a little bit longer. It's not the end of the world here, and they're doing a pretty good job of stopping Bolstering from slowing them down too much here. Getting back up on their mounts and moving towards Alunza, though. Yasma below 50% health, though. Forgot Global, this is where they've committed their final bloodlust to the dungeon here. They're taking those Soul Rends into the corners. I like this strategy with the Soul Rends. And then they're just going to keep moving the boss away from that corner where the Soul Rend was dropped. Okay, spiders are in a little bit of a sketchy spot now. They're going to have to navigate these spiders, okay? That spider does get popped by Got Global.
They need to be very careful with these spiders. They're taking them. It's overlapping the Quaking. Wade's trying to play very offensive, which I really like, but his team aren't backing him up on this. They need to either be using defensive or playing better. Thalamin dropping very low. Quaking coming in. I think Felinator's used Hand of Protection on him there. I'm not sure if that was. If it was, then it was a very good play by him. They need to be so careful. They're not helping Wade out. But the boss is very, very low. I don't think they have anything to worry about at this point. I think it's fairly safe to say that they've probably got this game tied up unless they do something absolutely crazy. Again, taking the spiders, Quaking coming in, Thalamir dropping very low again. You need to be so careful with those spiders as they can absolutely destroy you.
It's a good thing, though, that we used that Ardent Defender to get through the fire, though. It was never needed here.
Never needed
Completely
it
safe
at all.
Cooldown. Yeah. And they are going to take down Yasma here. 20 minutes for the Ataldazar. Going to Got Global over Hula and the Blowfish. I do believe, though, that Hula and the Blowfish has won in our hearts and minds with that incredible composition.
Absolutely fantastic composition. They do take 4th place, Got Global getting 3rd in our tournament. Let me switch back to the desk. Moose, you were watching there on the sidelines. What did you make of that game? What did you make of that comp, which personally, I think we should all just adopt as the new meta. I don't think we should bother with these paladins or these warriors and druids and all that. I think this should be the new meta comp. At me if you think I'm wrong.
So personally, I think they're holding out on us because this is the new meta comp, and they just didn't want us to. They didn't want to display the true potential of this comp, and they're holding off for the next MDI. So I expect to see. It did not unfortunately play out the way that we were hoping. And in a lot of the things we sort of talked about ahead of time, the no shroud, the no shadow meld. Some of the Prot Warrior, the Resto Druid versus Disc Priest, stuff like that. We did see a lot of weaknesses to that comp. But I think they were just playing it for fun, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good game overall.
Yeah, I think that there was a fantastic amount of cool strategies that we saw from both teams. And even though Got Global there finished a couple minutes in advance, like Hula and the Blowfish would not have been far behind were it not for a couple of those things not being executed, super cleanly. And I think they only gave it the one shot. They didn't, practice run this thing a bunch of times. I think they gave it, the one try for us, and it was a really good try. So I think that they have a performance that they can be really proud of here.
Well, I am definitely very proud of Hula and Blowfish. We are going into a small 6-minute break now. Just let everybody grab a drink, go chill for a bit, and when we return, we will be having our Paint for Femme versus Forced Rerollers Grand Final, the best of 3. I am very much looking forward to that. We will catch you guys on the other side. We'll see you very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the KSM Summer Showdown. I'm back with Dratnos and Moose, and we are all geared up for our best of 3 grand final between Painful Femme and Forced Rerollers. Moose, 2 excellent teams. I don't want to say who do you think is going to win, but who are you maybe leaning towards at this early stage, bearing in mind we've only seen one game?
I honestly think these are two very, very good teams, pretty equally matched. These are both teams that have either competed MDI or are MDI quality caliber. I think some stuff happened with the Pain for Fem team. I don't remember exactly what that was, but they definitely would have been up there. And Gamer Dads did compete in one of the MDIs. So these are both very competent teams. They're running very similar comps, and I think we're going to see some really good stuff out of both of them.
And Dratnos, how about you? 3 games to go. How are you feeling for these next 3?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the strategies work in this entire best of 3. I'm looking forward to. I'm of course rooting for my NA friends, the Gamer Dads, Trell's team. But of course, Paint for Femme is a phenomenal team, and I don't think they've been defeated any time they've played on KeystoneMasters so far. So
I
it would be
think
a
that's
first
correct.
to
I
see them
cannot
go
remember a
down.
single game
Yeah.
that they've ever dropped. Right then.
I
Well,
remember last
sorry.
last Keystone Masters, we certainly lost to them like 3 times when I was competing in that one. So they just wiped the floor with us. But yeah, I'm rooting for the rerollers.
Well, let's see what happens. Let's take a little look at the beginning of our final. Going into game 4, we have upped the level to 19, giving them a little bit more of a challenge. Not too much, but just pushing it up a tiny little bit here. Painful Femme versus Forced Rerollers with the Tyrannical, Bursting Skittish, Reaping Moofs. One thing I want to point out here that is relatively interesting, we have a couple of different racials coming in here aside from the Night Elf meta. Femme going for the Dark Iron Dwarf and Shift and Cynic going for the Dwarves. Can you just explain to everyone at home who maybe doesn't know why are these guys choosing to switch out to Dwarves over Night Elves in King's Rest specifically?
Yeah, so we sort of pointed it out last game or 2 games ago rather. The rogues being night elves aren't necessary. Obviously, you have a little more lenience, like you can sort of use advantage more liberally if you do have that shadow model as a backup. But the reason you go dwarf, obviously, is because it's one the best DPS ratio, but also good defensive if you need it, and it's not really needed. Something I did want to point out is that Fem is actually Dark Iron Dwarf, and that is in this particular dungeon very very good because the Dark Iron Dwarf racial towards the end of the dungeon you have berserkers that apply bleeds, and Dark Iron Dwarf racial can actually cleanse that bleed. And so it's very useful in that scenario. And then obviously, I'm pretty sure Dwarf also does that as well from the Shift and Sin if they happen to get that bleed as well.
It will be very interesting to see how those rogues can help out their tank. I think without further ado, we are ready for our grand final here. Pain for Femme versus Forced Rerollers. Let's get this going. Switch it over now because I know exactly where I'm going. There we go. Game window up. King's Rest, off we go. So things I'm expecting to see from the start here. There are 2 ways you can kind of play this. Teams, they don't really tend to do the constructs at the beginning, but we have seen it before where they have gone for those, try to get a little bit of front-loaded trash, but typically you'll tend to see these resto druids just going as quickly as they can towards the little... Is it a gong? Is that what we'd call it? Would we call it a gong, a little idol? I don't know what we'd really call that.
Gong,
A
yeah.
gong. We'll go with gong.
I
They're
would
going
call
to
it
go
a
there.
gong.
And they're going to click that as soon as possible. We can see Miwa rushing off there. Using Sky Step, maybe? Yeah, I think that's safe to say.
Yep.
That's a dash properly combined with a Sky Step to get there as quickly as possible. Forced Reroll is doing something very similar. Both shrouding through to get there. Ooh, a lovely little split screen so we can see exactly who's doing what. So, Moose, what are you expecting from this this first round? Well, this combination, it's going to be very spicy.
So right off the bat, you see from Force Rerollers, the rogue can pre-cloak and dispel all of those the little minions of Zool that so Cloak pulls all of those, and so on Horde you're actually able to Arcane Torrent and then vanish those. Now since they're Alliance, they don't have that Arcane Torrent, they have to use the Cloak, and so that's why you see this first pull is actually these back two pulls. Typically on live you see everyone start at the opposite end near the gong, so that's sort of why they're doing this backwards pull here, just to get rid of those right off the bat. And yeah, and that's actually a pretty nasty pull right off the bat because you have those bursting. The rogues are able to ignore the bursting with Cloak, obviously, but all of the other people on the team unfortunately took that, and so that was a very nasty pull right off the bat. But they lusted it, and they did pull it off pretty well.
One thing I do want to point out, Pain Fam need to be very, very careful here. This is not a nice pull for your healer at all. This is very healing intensive. Even on a Restorator, one of the strongest healers right now. As I was literally just about to say, they've highlighted my point excellently. 4 members of Pain Fam taking that Gust Slash there. That is going to put on an extra load of just completely unnecessary damage. It is very hard for them to dodge those, but I would like to see them be making a little bit more of an effort to try and do that. Fem jumping out here, at this point, it can get very, very spicy. Mio needs to be very, very careful, though, because Fem is so far away. He needs to make sure he's positioning himself in such a way that he can heal the group, and he can heal Fem as well, and he can get the enrages off of these champions here. They are going to proc their first Reaping Wave as well. I think Forced Rerollers, yep, they're getting those as well. Likely going to see this onto the boss, I would imagine. Once he's spawned in, you can see him coming out of his little golden pool there, and they're going to go onto the boss straight away. And I think Forced Rerollers are probably going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, so one of the things, this boss, so this is Tyrannical. This boss in King's Rest is extremely difficult. Mechanics-wise, it's pretty simple, but the Spit Gold, this is pre-nerf Spit Gold. So Spit Gold is doing a lot of damage. It basically takes about 50% to 75% of your HP per tick. And so we do have rogues, which can cloak it, and then we have the monk, which can karma it. So they do have some stuff. Obviously the druid has bear forms, things like that, but you basically need some sort of cooldown, or your healer has to tunnel you. And on top of that, the tank is also getting trucked pretty hard on this boss since it's tyrannical. So there's a lot of healing, very healing intensive boss fight on this first boss.
We do see Star going down very early there on side of Force Rerollers. Hunter doing a very good job of keeping himself up there. One of the things I just want to pick up on what you said there. Rogues do have Cloak, I believe they can use to get rid of this. Like you said, Sistara very good defensively. Resto Druids, they can do it. They can do it. They've got the Bear Form, they've got the Bark Skin, they've got Iron Bark as well. They're not as good as these classes who just have these absolutely massive defensives which just can get rid of it, or just completely immune it. One thing that I do know about Hunte, I believe looking at the list here, does have Shadow Meld? Yep, does have Shadow Meld. So what you'll see likely once that comes off is the second he gets a Spit Gold, he's just going to use that as the boss is casting on him, and that will force it to recast on somebody else. As you can see, just going very, very low from the Spit Golds here. Probably a good idea to just get that off and try and get that onto a rogue, make sure they can deal with it. They are doing very well, though. Need to make sure they keep these ads away from the boss, maybe not too far away. They want to let the rogues have a little bit of fun, but they are going to use the Ring of Peace here, making sure they're not getting too close, otherwise the boss will get a horrible, horrible buff, which at that point, it can be pretty much Ogre, especially on Tyrannical. You're just chunking through a huge amount of extra health, which is completely unnecessary.
Yeah. One of the things I did want to point out for rogues on this particular boss, typically you never take elusiveness, but on this particular boss, this is, especially on Tyrannical, is probably the only boss that you actually want to take elusiveness over cheat death, and that basically just gives you every time you faint, you get 20% DR, and it doesn't have to be AoE. So the Spit Gold, they just get that 20% DR, and you can pretty much cover every Spit Gold unless you get 2 in a row, I believe. And so it's very good to take. Obviously, it causes a little bit more danger because they don't have that safety net of cheat death anymore, which can be a little scary later on in the dungeon. But as we said earlier, this Tyrannical first boss and I think the third boss are pretty much the only, quote, hard parts of this dungeon on Tyrannical.
I wonder why with this shroud and cloaks and elusiveness that we are seeing so many rogues. I just can't figure it out. I guess we'll just have to see as they go into the dungeon how they do. The boss here getting very low for them, into the low sort of 10%. Pain for Fem, I'd say about the same, maybe slightly ahead. We're talking a few percent maximum here. They are going to get this boss down and they are going to move into the gauntlet. Now, to remind everybody just before we get there, this was done on Tournament Realms, so they will be able to pick. I believe they pick up the top left one first and they go counterclockwise, if I recall correctly. But the order is set, so this is going to be the same for both of them. Force Reroll is getting it down now. One thing which we did see a lot of people do in the MDI kind of became the standard. Standard pull. We're getting a Mio's perspective here, so I'm assuming we're going to be able to see this in a second. The constructs they didn't pull at the beginning. Typically, what teams will do to reduce the downtime in into the gauntlet room even is they will grab these constructs and they will take them through. I'm assuming that's why Miwa's just okay. Miwa's going for that door. He's going to have to wait for it to open. I believe you have to trigger the role play in the gauntlet first, and then the door will open. He'll be able to pull them. He'll be able to dash back in, doing it absolutely beautifully, and then they will just be able to reduce the downtime that they have during this gauntlet itself. Force 3 was already making a light work of this first pack. They're getting their constructs in now. It can be very deadly, though. It can be really, really deadly. If you get caught by one of these, there's just so much going on in this room. You can just get comboed. You can just get comboed.
Yeah. It's very easy to get comboed, but it's very efficient because aside from the lightning smash that these golems do, they don't really do anything else. They do hit a little hard for the tank, but assuming you have everything under control, I mean, see, like right here, there's just a bunch of dead time where nothing's spawning, and obviously they have something to kill, and they're gaining percent from it. And it also later on allows them to skip some of the nasty trash in that hallway before the third boss.
And we'll see very shortly they should be moving on to their second set of mobs. Here they go, spawning in now. One of the nice things about this comp is that they do have lots of ways of dealing with King... How do you pronounce his name? Rahul? Rahul, let's go with that. It sounds fancy.
I have no idea how to pronounce these names.
We'll go with the king. That's everybody knows who we're talking about. It's this guy here. We've just seen Typhoon. He will start a channel, and then once that channel has started casting, if you ring a piece him, if you Typhoon him, you name it, any kind of knockback, that will cancel it immediately, and you do not have to worry about it at all. How are they doing on percentage? So when they kill this, I believe they should proc Reaping. They're hoping to take that into the next set of mobs. Which will be the little king and queen, little Romeo and Juliet in the corner here. They do have to be kind of careful with this, though, with the reaping on that as well. You can get mind controlled. You can be put in a situation where you lose control of your character completely. You could regain consciousness, and you could just be in one of these shadow smashes, and you do not want to be standing in one of those. You know, one of them, it's kind of annoying. 2, 3 of them at that point. Again, you know, this room, it's full of combos, deadly combos, which can just absolutely destroy you. Trail's dropping very, very low here. Sistara, I think...
We see a death coming out.
Explaining exactly what I was just saying there. I don't know if that was maybe a little bit of a weird animation, maybe right on the edge of that. But Sistara is going to go down.
Yeah, and one of the things I did want to point out, so the queen here, like you said earlier, on Horde, it's very easy to just run out an Arcane Torrent and dispel them. On Alliance, they're both Alliance teams, and you cannot do that as easily. And so it's a little scarier having that mind control and, you know, the just all the stuff going out, and it's very easy for you to get hit. And yeah, so you see they're finishing off the 2 mobs here. They finish off the Reaping, and they are just killing this king right here and waiting for the next mob spawn. I think they have one more set to go. Yep. They have the archer and the raptor in the corner.
I would have said, if I'm being perfectly honest, I would have said Pain for Femme was slightly behind, even with that first death from forced rerollers. Unfortunately, Sistara did die on the first boss, which means they had to use their combat res on that boss. They didn't have one up to get Sistara up then. I think, yep, they did manage to get a res in between the mobs, so Sistara is up. They are their full team. At this point, Pain for Femme have just used that opportunity. They have just snuck ahead. Their mobs down to 50%, forced rerollers just starting on theirs. I'm excited to see this next room. I'm very excited to see this next room. It's one of my favorite rooms, just out of any of the dungeons. We have all of those little slimes. We have those constructs. There is a construct on the bridge. Teams typically tend to skip this. It's one of those things where you pull a little bit early, and then you can just get rid of this. It's on its own. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a lot of effort to get in there. I'm assuming we're going to see both teams skipping this.
Yeah, I see the shroud going out, and one of the things in this next room is one of the big strategies that most people do. So it is bursting week. Typically, this is a speed run, so you ideally want to pull all of these together, right? And obviously, if you kill, so they are pulling everything together. If you pull everything together, well, that's a bajillion stacks of bursting, and you're pretty much going to die unless you have some sort of immunity. Monks do have karma. If they die at the same time, they are able to live that. Rogues obviously can cloak it. The other two do not have any sort of way to survive this much bursting stacks. And so what I believe you're going to see is that both of them are going to try and outrange the bursting at 60 yards way far down the bridge when this is dead. And they're just leaving the rogues to clean up, which looks like they got a couple stacks, but they avoided the majority of them.
I was going to say, Paperfem doing an excellent job here. These mobs inside of Force Rerollers are getting very low. Trell hasn't actually gone out yet. He's doing it now, but I think he might just still be in range. He is going to get a few stacks here. How high is he going to go? How that's 12. In the few seconds it took him to go off, I couldn't even track how many that was. Sistara unfortunately going down as well. Trell going down. They do have a combat res, but I'm assuming all the mobs have died. Yep, looks like all the mobs have died. They are going to get the res off.
There, Trell and Sistara were not in. They got a lot of the bursting. They didn't cleanly kill all the things at the same time. So Sistara was not able to karma that, and obviously Trell was still in range of that. But it wasn't too crucial of a loss because obviously Hunte was out of range and got that res off.
It is these small things, like as you see right up until that gauntlet room, they were fairly neck and neck, and at this point Paperfem are just creeping slightly ahead. It's one little death here, it's one little mispull there. Just all those small things do add up and give them the advantage. They are in the same pull here though. They're not massively far behind. I wouldn't say this is gone by any means. We do see them grabbing two constructs, which can be very, very scary. They're dragging them together, putting them by this one coffin. If I recall correctly, both these constructs will just entomb somebody into the coffin. I think it's their closest to, or is it the player's closest to?
The players closest to. Yeah, so if you can actually do a strat where you can actually sync them up. Ideally, you don't want to sync them up, but you can sync them up and just have people stand on opposite coffins, and it'll rotate which coffin. So you see Paperfem killing those constructs and immediately pulling the boss into this reaping, which is very good. This is tyrannical. However, this boss doesn't really do that much. It hurts the tank a lot, and it does drain fluids. Luckily, a lot of these classes, both rogues are able to vanish or cloak the drain fluids. Obviously, Monk can karma or dampen the drain fluids, and then druids can just bear form or I believe they can also shadow meld the drain fluids as well, since they're alliance. So the drain fluids is really the only big part of this boss, and then just stacking up the fires in a nice orderly fashion along the wall, just so you have enough room so when people do get entombed, you're able to have a clear path to get them out.
As you said, with those drain fluids, the rogues can get rid of them. I believe you can do things like Feign and Viz as well, I believe, work on them. The only thing that is kind of nasty about that is that if you make it cancel the cast, it will just go straight back to hitting the tank. This is a very hard-hitting tank boss, so you can do it. It basically takes the stress off your healer, but then just ramps up the stress on your tank. So, you can make a bit of a choice here about who you want to put the pressure onto. One thing I do notice is that neither team decided to use Lust. Interesting, I think. I don't know if personally I would rather just use it here and then get another one at the end of the dungeon on the final boss, because it's a long dungeon. The bosses do have a lot of health.
Be doing, I agree. It might be a little more time efficient to use it on multiple packs at once in the next hallway, and if they're saving it, I imagine that's what they're going to do. Typically, what you want to do in a non-speed run is that you want to lust this boss so that you'll have a lust on either the trash or the third boss, and then you also have a lust at the very end. So typically you're able to get 4 lusts in this dungeon. Obviously, this is a speed run. They're only going to get 2 more, maybe. Probably only 1 more at this point, being totally honest. And so they're probably saving it for the third boss or trash in the following hallway.
Yeah, I like I say, I think you would have 2 choices really. You got 2 ways of playing it. One is you're just going to do a bigger pull after this boss. You get a lust, maybe sacrificing the second lust, or it would either not be there at all. It will be right at the tail end of the final boss, or you're going to use one here and then get one on the final boss as well, but neither team opting to do that. Boss is going very, very low here. Machimba 4% for Paint for Femme, and at this point, again, it's ever so slight. Even with these few deaths on the side of Force Rerolls, they're really not that far behind. Any slip up from Paint for Femme, and at that point, Force Rerolls will storm ahead.
Yeah, the Force Rerollers is just a couple percent behind, as you see Feint for Femme killing this boss and moving on to this next room. This next room is very, very, very scary for tanks. Just in general, where there's a couple abilities. You have the Berserkers that put the dot on the tank or whoever has the highest threat closest to them. You have the Witch Doctors that do a Frost Shock, which can almost insta-give you on Fortified. Luckily, this is Tyrannical. So you can see here, they're doing a pretty big pull. And this is where they blow their lust. This is what we were talking about. This is a very dangerous pull. You have multiple priestesses. Got a lot of things to interrupt. The spectral bolts. You got 2 berserkers, I believe. I see 2. So this is where we were talking about earlier. So Fem is a Dark Iron Dwarf, and so having that ability to cleanse one of these or both of these stacks off if they go off at the same time is very, very nice for pulls like this.
I mean, if you look at Sebek there, he's got 2 stacks, and even with, I assume that's full hots on him, he is just getting absolutely chunked on those ticks there. One thing they did do was they CC'd one of the Beastmasters. I think that's a smart play. Just taking off a little bit of the pressure there. They don't have to really worry about that. They can deal with it later. Very tough bursting here with those debuffs as well. Sebek gonna have to play it a little bit carefully, but doesn't manage to make it through. Forced rerollers doing. I don't think this is quite the same pull.
They did a similar pull. I don't think
slightly
it's quite
smaller.
as big, but they did a similar pull. They did pop their lust as well. I think so. They're on the Beastmaster pack at the same time. It looks like they did the 2-pack and then they did the Beastmaster pack separately. So they still have the Raptors up, and I imagine so. The Ring of Peace goes out. They do not want to pull the Brute at this time. I think they're going to pull the Brute with Reaping. Oh, not Reaping yet.
And they're going to have to kill a little bit more to get their Reaping. One thing that did happen there, I believe Cynic went down, but at the same time on the side of Paint for Femme, Ricky went down. I was gonna point out it's just another tiny little thing to add on to the advantages that Paint for Femme have, but Ricky kindly decided to even out a little bit there for both of the teams, so nobody is at a disadvantage. Very kind of you, sir. Yeah, I would like to see Reaping involved with this. I know that Brutes aren't the nicest thing to add into a pack, but doing it on its own doesn't feel massively efficient. I don't know. Maybe I would have had one of the rogues go ahead and just have that Beastmaster, have the guy down the other end even, and then just pull these 3, use these to get the Reaping, and then drag it into that. Something along those lines might not quite be enough count, but.
Yeah, so you see here, Paint for Femme has already procced their Reaping Wave, while Force Rerollers has not procced it. Although Force Rerollers will proc their Reaping Wave as soon as they kill 2 of these mobs, I believe. Both of them are, I believe, Force Rerollers is planning on pulling the Reaping into the following pack with that Beastmaster. But both of them are making very efficient use of their time, pulling one of these mobs with the Reaping. Again, very, very close match, neck and neck so far.
Trail sweating a little bit, getting these stacks up before he goes into the next pull. Very smart play. You don't want to be biting off more than you can chew. You'd rather take it a little bit slow. DPS might get a bit annoyed, but I'd rather the tank live than the DPS mess that one up. At this point, I'm just looking at the counts. They're really not far off. Forced Reroll is doing an excellent job of being able to. I wouldn't necessarily say they've pulled it back at this point, but they are certainly snapping on the heels of Paint for Femme. They're not letting the deaths put them too far behind. Interesting to see what they're gonna do next. So we talked about it in previous games where 3 or 4 players playing Night Elf, 1 player not. Interesting to see what they are going to do here. Looks like they're maybe letting the guys go through with the Ring of Peace, and then they're going to sacrifice Femme here. Oh, the guy. Okay, no, the team appears to be coming back.
Is so the reason you do this has been one of the MDI strats is that you pulled those 2 golems at the very start of the dungeon, and that 5-pack that they currently have blinded, you don't need to pull. It looks like they're pulling actually, but you're able to pull it separately just to make that 5-pack a little safer because there's a lot of dangerous mobs in that 5-pack. Oh, and Fem goes down.
Not sure if that was intentional or not.
Was
I get what you were going for, but it doesn't seem like maybe they were all on the same page there.
oh,
Ricky going down as
it looks
well
like
as
there's a little
Fem.
bit of confusion. I think that was sort of intentional. The rogues looked like they shadow melded, and the healer was totally out of combat. So I think there was a little bit of miscommunication, maybe. Unless Fem was purposefully breaking the blind, just to make sure that they wouldn't come in. Regardless, it doesn't look like it was it really hindered them at all. So they move on to this third boss, and they go straight into the throwing axe lady. One of the things I wanted to point out is that this boss on Tyrannical hurts, and it's pretty much the axe that she throws. She throws 2 whirling axes followed by a severing axe, and that's the basic pattern. The severing axe is able to be dodged. If you do not dodge it on Tyrannical, it obliterates you. It is a 25-second dot, I believe, and it just absolutely demolishes whoever you're on without a cooldown. A lot of the things, so rogues are able to ignore it. I believe Monk, actually, I'm not sure if Monk can do it, but you're also able to shadow meld it.
We see his
And
Cynic going
so,
very, very low from that axe there. Proccing the cheat death as well. This hits like an absolute truck, and they need to be very, very careful with it. I would say certainly from a healing perspective, this is probably the toughest bit really that you've got to deal with. I wouldn't say the other two are particularly a massive concern. But as you can see, look at Cynic, look at Shift, they're just getting absolutely trucked by this. If I'm not mistaken, I think Dwarves can get rid of this, can't they? I think they can use their racial to get it off.
I'm not 100% sure. I know rogues can use riposte ahead of time if they do it properly. This, I believe, I don't, so yeah, I don't think any of them did actually ignore it. I think they all just soaked it and took the damage, and Hunte just healed through it, which was a lot of healing on his part.
We'll get a fact check on that one, but they have moved on to Zanzul the Wise, moving into this fight nicely. Not too much really to worry about at this point. The axes have gone around the edge. I would say just for this first like maybe 10-15 seconds, it is just pure pump, and then unfortunately you have to deal with these again. Not very nice, but I think we've only seen one person take one of the axes so far, but it was intentional to gain a little bit extra damage. We'll see here the tokens are spawning. They're going to knock that explosive one down at that point. Many people have different preferences on which one they kill next. I think it kind of depends on the comp of your group, but they're all equally just annoying. Nothing aside from the explosive I think is particularly going to kill you.
Typically, you always want to kill the explosive. The second one you typically want to do is the shield, the earth wall totem, and then you're able to purge that off the boss and immediately start DPSing. Especially with this comp, with the rogue windwalker comp, the other two really don't matter. One of them causes casts to be interrupted, which doesn't really matter except for the healer, and then the other one puts all these little swirlies on the ground, which again, as long as you're dodging, it doesn't really hinder you. So typically what they're doing currently is they're actually just dragging the boss over to the leftover totem and just cleaving it down, just on their leisure whenever it's convenient for them. You can see both teams have an excellent interrupt order. The big interrupt here that you want to do is Poison Nova. Obviously, if that goes off, it's essentially a wipe. And again, on that Poison Nova, you want to actually delay that to 6-second cast, I want to say, and you actually want to delay that till the very end, just because you can actually ignore some totem casts and lightning bolt casts if you hold off on interrupting that, which may help you. So they do get a second round of totems from the Forest Rerollers as they kill the boss, so they're going to have to deal with that and clean that up while they're dealing with this final boss.
Now, two things that I want to mention. One, on the side of Pain for Femme, I thought what they were going to do, and maybe Ricky's going to start one off here. With the barrel through, there are many ways that you can just completely avoid this. One of them is the Transcendence that you're going to see Ricky do here. That's going to completely... He's not even going to bother casting it. Shut him down. Rogues, again, anyone who can feign invis, you can basically create this train where, for I'd say a good 20 seconds, the boss is going to try and cast his ability, and then you're going to get right to the end of it, and you're going to force him to recast it, and he's going to try and cast again, you're going to get to the end and forced to recast, but unfortunately the combo was broken relatively early on.
Yeah, one of the things I did want to point out is on this, when you do feign or vanish on this particular boss, depending on the timing of his cast, you can actually desync when he does the backhand and when he puts the buff on you. And so typically he puts a debuff on you and then he charges at you and tries to attack you. If you feign, you can actually desync it so where that he'll attack you and then put the debuff on you so that it doesn't really matter, and it helps the tank out a lot. I don't see that desync happening here, but Pain for Fim, obviously killing the boss and shrouding past all the stuff that they skipped, and they are moving on to Zool.
Unfortunately, nobody cares about the tanks. They are going to move on to the mini-boss here. What we're likely going to be seeing is they are going to kill this and then drag the Reaping down and pull it onto the boss with that Bloodlust for them, which will be up in approximately 15 seconds. Force Rerollers, again, it's just slightly behind at this point. They did get that extra wave of totems, which I don't think Pain for Fem got, if I recall correctly. But I think this has just been the theme of the whole dungeon, really, is that they've always just been slightly behind. It's never been a huge amount behind, but just these tiny little things where they would fall behind, they'd catch up again, somebody would make a small mistake, they'd fall behind, catch up, fall behind, catch up, just ping pong, ping pong, ping pong. If they could have just played slightly more consistently, I don't think it was even playing safer, just playing slightly more consistently, then I think at this point we would be extremely neck and neck.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is you had a couple crucial deaths. You had a death from Sistar in the Gauntlet room, which really slowed them down. And I think that was probably one of the big turning points that pushed Pain for Fim ahead. So you see Pain for Fim moving on to the final boss. They did proc Reaping here, which I believe they can just Shadow Meld off. Oh, they do not Shadow Meld off of it. So Reaping here, so this is actually a pretty small Reaping wave, and it actually is not a bad idea to pull it into the boss because it actually helps Rogue single target damage, getting those stacks up and increasing their single target damage, which is very good for boss fights, obviously.
I was going to say, all the rogues in the chat laughing there as you dare even suggest not letting this Reaping Pack go onto the boss. They would be absolutely livid. I'm sure Dratnos will be telling you off after the game here. Force Rerollers getting theirs down. Interesting thing, how are they going to deal with this minion of Zul? They don't have anything to knock it off with, but they are just dealing with it, I think, by DPSing it down, and then they are going to get their Reaping and pull it onto the boss as well, I assume. Interestingly, though, they don't have Bloodlust. They have used their Bloodlust at a different timing to Pain for Fem, so they do not have that available. This boss can be very long. It can be a very, very, very long boss. Pain for Fem seem to be saving theirs for later when all the three mobs are up together, just getting a maximum cleave, helping those rogues out with the damage there.
Yeah, so you really want to, so the way this boss works is that you push him, and at, I believe it's 70% and 50%, or is it 80% and 60%? There's two marks where he spawns raptors, and the first raptor just jumps and does his little scratchy stuff and puts bleed on you. The second raptor redirects all damage that the boss takes to the raptor and actually fears you every 10 or so seconds, and so both of the raptors combined, the fastest way to kill this boss is obviously to just cleave down the raptors, ignore them, and just push the boss. Doing that can actually be very scary when both raptors are up, because you can get feared into the slash, which can be very deadly, or feared into a tornado even. And so doing so is very scary.
One thing I have noticed as well throughout the dungeon, again, it's not been a huge amount. Pain for Fem seem to have slightly more single target. We are seeing a mirror comp here, so you can kind of compare the DPS meters side by side. They do just have that tiny bit more single target, which on a boss like this may have them out. Trail dropping very, very low there. No worry for Hunte, though. Gonna top him up very, very easily. One of the nice things that this method does provide is Ring of Peace. You can take Vortex as well. You can keep the little guy, little jumpy dude, into the boss. Just keep that cleave up. You don't necessarily have to worry about him jumping out. But most people tend to stick in melee anyway. This is a full melee meta, assuming that the Resto Druid is making optimal use of his damaging abilities.
Yeah, so Pain for Fim on to the final phase of this boss, and in case you don't know, there are two different patterns that this boss throws spears from the ground. There's one pattern that's currently going on for Pain for Fem, and it starts basically where the line is currently, and it goes clockwise around the entire room. It's very very easy to dodge. You're able to move on the other side of it, just let it go all the way around, and you're able to dodge it. The second pattern that's currently going on happens in pie slices across the room, and it's a lot more annoying to dodge, especially when you have the leap that the boss does. And right now it's just sort of alternating patterns. Which pattern it chooses is definitely random. And it looks like Pain for Fem is wrapping up this dungeon.
Pain for Fem taking their pie and eating it as they take game number 1 in our best of 3 final. Just wait for a little victory screen here. We'll switch over and then we'll get our casters' thoughts. So Dranos, you were the guy on the side there. I'm sure you have a lot of things to say to Moofsy here. Rogues not being allowed to use blade flurry? What is this madness?
That was almost ridiculous, but luckily the teams weren't able to listen to Moofs and get to pull the trash onto the boss there, which is fantastic, of course, for the Rogues. But yeah, what a close game. That was actually incredible. The closest game we've seen here so far today. Just 30 seconds or so difference between the rerollers and Pain for Fem. So I think we're in store here for a really close series here, as there are up to 2 remaining games in this best of 3 for us to see between these teams.
And Moose, what did you make of that? Did you like the use of the dwarves and the Dark Iron Dwarves, especially?
I did. I think both teams. I sort of expected both of these teams were very, very skilled. Rather, they're both MDI caliber. Wow, I cannot speak. They're both MDI caliber teams. It was a very close match, and aside from a couple little screw ups here and there, it really was a very, very close match. And I'm not really surprised by the turnout. I'm hoping these next 2 are very close as well.
So like we said at the beginning, forced rerollers, they were your bets. You want to see them do well. Honestly, I do think they could take this. I do think they could take it, but they need to just play a little bit cleaner. Not, as I said, not necessarily safer, but just playing a little bit more cleaner. Let's look now at our game 5, second game in our best of 3 final. Let's take a look at the comp here. Motherload plus 19, Tyrannical Teaming, Grievous Reaping. Lovely little combo here. Dranos, one thing I noticed on the side of forced rerollers, we do have a DK. It's the first time we've seen a DK, I think, certainly DPS DK, I think, at all on KSM. Certainly the first time we've seen it today. What would you say they are hoping to achieve by bringing this DK into the Motherload?
Yeah, we actually see DK in Motherload. This is one of the dungeons where Death Knights are at their most popular. There are some good opportunities to pull stuff onto bosses and benefit from the unholy quadratic scaling nonsense that they can do. But one of the really useful abilities that is unique to the Death Knight kit is the Death Grip. And Death Grip can facilitate piloting of mechanized peacekeepers in the early part of this dungeon. And those mechanized peacekeepers are worth a tremendous amount of enemy forces. So Force Rerollers is going to get a huge amount of benefit in speeding up the run here with that Death Grip and with the extra damage they can do, particularly if they can pull Reaping Waves onto bosses. They will be able to just melt those bosses. The Rogues will have to hold off on their blade flurrying. This is one of the hardest things in the world, is to be the rogue in this group with the Death Knight, and you just have to watch them have all that juicy AOE, and you're not supposed to hit your blade flurry because it'll reduce the single target damage your group does.
Totally agree. Moose, looking at these affixes though, what do you make of them? What would you say the teams really need to be watching out for in this Tyrannical Teaming Grievous setting?
So Tyrannical really isn't that big of a deal in Motherload. The way you typically do Motherload is all of the stuff in the first room prior to the first boss makes up about 75% of your entire trash, and most of that stuff is not teaming. And so the the teaming affix really doesn't matter too much, except for some of the stuff towards the end. Tyrannical Motherload, these bosses take forever to kill. And so especially the last boss, these are going to be some very long boss fights. But it also means that you can pull extremely large on all of the trash up front. So I'm expecting, especially with Cesar on that Unholy DK, I'm expecting some very, very burly pulls.
I'm definitely looking forward to see what the Force Rerollers can do. We shall jump into the game. I'm very much looking forward to this DK. Let's set the game going. Full screen that and take it away. Boys, Motherload, plus 19, let's go.
All right, so we have Paint for Femme up against the Forced Rerollers here. Paint for Femme up a game in the series. This is the best of 3. So if Paint for Femme wins this one, that will be the end today, and they will be our champions. But Forced Rerollers has a chance to take it to a game 3 here with a good showing in the Motherload here. They do have that Death Knight. Sistara, very good on the Unholy Death Knight. I think more comfortable on that spec than on the Windwalker, so that may be an added advantage to them. So yeah, we're getting started off here. Force Rerollers doing a big pull right near the start. Here's Sistara, yeah, gets the Death Grip, so that Death Grip is going to facilitate the piloting of an extra Peacekeeper, and then runs back outside and is promptly stunned by an Addled Thug, of course.
So here is the giant pull that we were talking about right off the bat. 2 Peacekeepers and 4 different groups of mobs. 3 Peacekeepers, 4 Peacekeepers coming in. That is a
And there's the Death and Decay. There's the Death and Decay. Look at his damage done.
300k.
There are the swords. He's striking. Yeah.
Everything melts. And that is why you bring an Unholy Decay in Mother.
That is, yeah. And the fact that one of these Peacekeepers here would have been much harder to pilot. I mean, you can do it with Ring of Peace, but it's very easy, very quick with the Unholy Death Knight. And those Peacekeepers are worth a tremendous amount of enemy forces as compared to every other mob in this place. So Force Rerollers getting a really good use out of the comp that they brought here. They do have 5% less physical damage because they don't have that that monk for that part there. So that is kind of an advantage of the Windwalker that doesn't show up on their bar in the damage meters. But yes, Sistara just going off here. Their first pull here is already triggering the first Reaping Wave, and they're going to presumably get control of this Reaping Wave and then move in to another pull here, grabbing even more stuff. Yep, there's the chain, and it looks like they're going to activate another Peacekeeper and grab some Thugs to go with it. Thugs can be pretty dangerous in this place, especially with Grievous rolling. Oh, and the Assassins are actually getting their cast off there. That is not how that's supposed to look. When you see those flechettes flying through the air, that's bad.
Yeah. The Death and Decay goes down again. Sistara jumps up in the DPS once again with this Reaping. Very fast. Paint for Femme still has not procced their first Reaping. They pulled a little smaller. They actually did not do the initial Shroud at the beginning. They opted to just pull straight up the middle, which is a little safer in case you wipe, obviously. But I think that the Shroud up the middle helped set up the DK AoE rather well for Force Rerollers.
Yeah, the two teams here are really playing to the strengths of their comp, right? The Rerollers wanted to do that Death Knight pull, but Paint for Femme doesn't have the same incentives, so the best pulls for them are going to be a different set of pulls than the ones for the Rerollers. They do have a pretty similar idea here, though, with the first Reaping Wave coming into a pretty similar pull, coming afterwards with the Peacekeepers, and looks like they've elected to not pull the next set of Thugs, but that's okay. There's still already a Thug here.
Very nasty pull with Reaping and a couple Peacekeepers. You see Shella dipping pretty low here. He gets topped off, and the healer actually goes down, so he instantly released and runs back. So this is a little sketch for Paint for
especially with Grievous ticking on everybody. Yeah, or not on everybody,
so
but
they're just sort of kiting, running around, just trying to keep the pull alive. The Restorer gets back and is able to top everyone off, and it looks like they recover. So not too much loss. We did lose about 20 seconds where this pull should have been over with, but
yeah, one really interesting thing here is, okay, if you look at the affixes that are active, there are very few affixes that actually interact with Reaping that make it any harder. Grievous and Teaming are 2 affixes that actually do. Like when Teaming is active, Reaping Waves are bigger, and when Grievous is active, that still happens off of Reaping damage. So this is actually a combination of affixes where the Reaping Waves will be at their hardest. And this is a dungeon also where Reaping is already hard. There are a lot of rough Reaping Waves with a lot of tormented souls. So we'll have to watch out. You can sometimes you can kind of autopilot through Reaping Waves, but this is not going to be a map where that's possible for either team.
Yeah, Force Rerollers pulling their second Reaping Wave, and again, chaining from other packs. I'm really glad Sistara had his auto claw off. So again, you're going to see Sistara throwing down that D&D and popping off right here, just immediately jumping to the top of the meter.
Yeah, that's that massive burst AoE from the Unholy Death Knight with that swords build and the Festermites and everything. Again, we're on the tournament realm, so they have access to whichever pieces of Azurite they want. and that facilitates a pretty nasty setup for Unholy Death Knights that does absurd damage in those AoE situations to really all targets, and even more the more targets get pulled. All right, we see another Death Grip here, activating another Peacekeeper. Ooh, actually, the jockey there did not choose to activate the Peacekeeper. This happens sometimes. It's a little inconsistent, and that's going to slow down the rerollers here. You hate to see that whenever one of those Peacekeeper activations gets a little scuffed. So they're going to have to adjust their route to make up for that count that they've lost here by that Peacekeeper not getting activated.
Yeah, so they'll end up having to pull a couple things down the road, which isn't the biggest deal, but again, it might cost them a little time down the road. Again, Force Reeler is pulling very large here to cater to that Unholy Decay, and they are moving very quickly through this with slightly higher trash percentage than Pain for Femme at the moment.
Yeah, Force Rerollers, I mean, both teams are using the same general strategy of getting as much trash as possible here at the start of the dungeon. But of course, they've picked a slightly different set of pulls to make that happen. Again, the rerollers are going to kind of want to have this, like, every time Sistara's cooldowns are up, they're going to want to pull a huge set of mobs around that. Whereas Paint for Femme is kind of happier just with a rolling, permanent, medium-sized pull at all times. So that's really the difference in the pulls here. These hard assassins, though, keep getting some ticks off of their flechettes. That's actually pretty annoying with Grievous, getting those Grievous stacks on everybody in the group.
Yeah, a lot of unnecessary damage going out, and between the double rogues and the Unholy Decay, you do have plenty of CC and interrupts to completely control 2 assassins plus Vendor 2. So you see both rogues getting extremely low with this Reaping. Again, the Reaping waves being very nasty Motherload, and that Grievous. So Hunte is able to stabilize everyone for the most part. You see health bars fluctuating a ton right here, and it looks like they're going to come out of this unscathed.
Yeah, Hunte, phenomenal healing there on that pull. Keeps everybody alive, despite a couple people getting within a hair's breadth of death. Paint for Femme in the same part of the map, but with a little bit less trash count, looks like. Here comes their third Reaping Wave as they activate another Peacekeeper and pull 2 packs with the Reaping Wave. This is a large pull from Paint for Femme, and they do not have access to their Bloodlust. This is a pull you'll often see with Bloodlust on live, but not possible for them here as they're only 5 minutes into the run, or 7 minutes into the run. Here comes all of these mobs, and they are surviving it for now, but if any of these casts start going off here from the real mobs here, the vendors or the assassin and such, it will be toxic. It'll be over for these guys very quickly. So they need to keep these things under control, and it looks like they've decided, all right, we've taken care of that vendor. It's time to add some more fun to this pack. Let's get a thug, let's get a jockey, and let's get another assassin into here. These jockeys, they're the ones that will pilot the Peacekeepers, and when they go into those Peacekeepers, you're going to get their count for free when the Peacekeeper dies. But when the jockeys don't pilot, they actually do quite a lot of damage to their nearest target with this Grease Gun ability. It's kind of invisible. It's like it doesn't have a cast or anything, but if you end up looking at damage taken towards the end of these dungeons, it actually does tremendous amounts of damage. So every time you have to fight a jockey by itself, it's usually worth doing quite a bit of damage to it and making sure that it doesn't live for a really long time.
Yeah, especially on those bolstering or raging weeks where it can, almost insta-give you and you just have no notice. So,
Yeah.
I'm just dead. All right, cool. I got Grease Gun.
Yeah, it casts it even when it's still CC'd as well. So you'll just see this mob, like, it can be like stunned and it'll just still pull out its gun and shoot somebody with the Grease Gun. It is a very fun thing to fight, but it looks like Paint for Femme pulling on into the pack just before the first boss, as is Force Rerollers. Force Rerollers just killing that there. 77.8% on the mob count for Force Rerollers, so they are very close to triggering their 4th Reaping Wave. It looks like they're going to trigger that wave and then pull the wave onto the boss and go off with Sistara's quadratic scaling, perhaps.
Yeah, so they're actually walking around the first boss to pull these 3 sort of. They're doing a small pack here, and like Dratno said, they basically just waiting for cooldowns to come up, and they're gonna trigger Reaping right here with these 3, and just
I don't know if this triggers Reaping. Does this trigger Reaping? 77.8?
I believe so.
78.3, 70,
no.
79.6. Not quite triggering Reaping.
They miscalculated.
Okay, that's all right. That's fine. You know what? It's no big deal. All right, we're waiting. We're waiting for cooldowns to recover. They're going to go into the Sapper and these Mine Rats now, and that's fine. This is just fine.
And so one of the things they really want to do here is that they're at 79.8%. So you really need to kill these at the exact same time to properly do the strat that they're going for. So it teams.
There is an interesting combination of like, okay, so they want to go off with the quadratic scaling here, but they kind of want to wait to do that until they kick the foot bombs into the boss when it's taking the 150% increased damage. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Sistar decides to just go right on the pull and forgo that damage taken increase, or whether he's going to end up waiting a little bit for those foot bombs to go out. It looks like that is going to be the play.
He has not D&D'd yet, so
yes,
it looks
now
like
he's going. There he goes.
So everyone's sort of holding off. I do not believe I see any blade flurries going off, and here comes the D&D.
Oh, moves the D&D, but the boss has to move because the gold coins are there.
Out of it. No.
Oh no. Okay, well everything is dead. Sistar still went off.
He did still get a lot of damage, but it did not go on the boss, which was lucky.
A lot of it went there. It still did substantial damage, but it was certainly not. That's not how it goes in the textbook, in the Unholy Death Knight textbook. It looks a little bit different than that, but not that much different than that. That's Sistar is a often cited source in that textbook and does a great job, and did manage to get quite a lot of damage on that boss, particularly given how much dodging they had to do at the time. Actually, I'm very impressed with the amount that he was able to put off there.
So force rerolls are still a decent amount ahead on this first boss here, and that's large in part due to that Death Knight AoE / single target interaction. So this is tyrannical, so this is a very, very long boss fight, and it can get very sketchy with the healing, and especially if you let the boss get any of these stacks of coins. Between that and Grievous, it is a very healing intensive fight, and it can get a little sketchy. It seems like both teams are doing fairly well at keeping everyone alive.
Yeah, this is a coin management fight. They really want to make sure that the boss doesn't pick up more than a couple stacks of those coins on the ground, and they also make sure they want to make sure they don't run out of space. On a 19, particularly with the huge amounts of damage they were able to put off at the start of this fight, it's probably not too dangerous. Like, they're not going to run out of space necessarily, but they do want to try and conserve space in the room. And it looks like one of the coins does get eaten up there, but that's okay for the rerollers.
Yeah, one coin is not that bad.
About 30% behind the rerollers. How are we doing on mob count? It looks like pretty comparable on both sides in the 80s. Is that for both teams?
About 80% for both teams, which is typical of Motherlode. You typically get the bulk of your trash and then finished it up in this next room, where Force Rulers is about to kill this boss.
All right, yeah, neither... There are a bunch of different strategies that the teams can use here for their last little bit of count. One thing we'll have to see is whether they choose to trigger the Reaping Wave before or after killing all the bosses. Some strategies involve triggering it with jumping on a mine right at the end of the dungeon after you kill the last boss.
So we do have the Unholy Decay. I'm expecting... Yep, here we go. Here's a ginormous pull, and here comes the Unholy Decay AoE. So expect to see another 300,000 DPS from Sistar.
Yeah, it does, I think, have a little bit of time to wait. Okay, yeah, here we go. A little bit of damage coming out from Sistar after everything is ready. Not until then. And does a good job of dodging these bombs, kiting around. Everybody is. Nice work from the rerollers. And that is going to get them a huge amount of count. They do interrupt a couple of those final blasts here, but that's not going to be too bad. And this one can also be pretty dangerous with Grievous, but they managed to get through that without anybody bleeding out. And that is going to get them another chunk of 10% all at once. Pain for Femme doing a pretty similar sized pull, though, in the bottom left corner of your screen. It is going to be a Shroud of Concealment, though, for the Force Rerollers, moving very sneakily here. They don't have to be too careful. They have a second Shroud. The Stone Fury. Very close there. Does get hit by the Distract, though, and will not see them. And they're going to move into the Azarok fight. So Azarok with the 4 Earth Ragers. Let's see who those target. It's 1 on Hunte, 2 on Hunte, and 2 in Cynic. Okay, it's not the end of the world. Cynic is going to have to do some kiting. Cynic will also get to make a decision about at what time he would like to activate his repost ability and just stand right under the boss for a little bit, because that'll give him a couple seconds to just full AoE. There you go. You'll see Cynic with the repost out. Does have stacks of the bleed, but is okay. It does pop the cheap death, though. And they are all AoEing everything down here. Sistar starts to get the cooldowns back and starts to jump to the top of the meters. There's really good news when the Death Knight here doesn't have to kite, but on the second set of fixates,
they got a little lucky with that, and both teams are running triple melee comp, so this boss is actually very dicey at the start when all of these are targeting you. Luckily, the rogues can obviously cloak it off and stuff like that, but Force Rerollers managed to get the majority of the ads down. And, from here, this is pre-buff. So if you don't know, on live, they actually buff this boss so that it spawns 2 ads at a time now. It is not the case currently in this matchup, as this is pre-nerf. You basically just have 1 ad that spawns, and it is essentially just a take and spank fight. And it's very boring.
Yeah,
There's not
we'll have to see
much going on.
One of the great things about the MDI and these kind of competitions is that anytime there's a boring pull, teams will find a way to not make it boring anymore and just pull more stuff onto the boss. So I'm looking for the rerollers to potentially pull the Taskmaster trash at some point here in the bottom left. You can see they're kind of creeping towards that part of the room. And Paint for Femme might do something similar. That's a good way to get some count.
So I did see him mark them ahead of time, so I'm thinking they might do something similar.
Yeah, I imagine what they're doing is they're waiting for the next ad to spawn, and they're going to take care of that ad, and then they are going to go into that pack. Yeah, you can see here they're just they're looking. Okay, Trell's looking. He's thinking about it.
So one thing you want to do typically on live, typically on hierarchies, you want to CC these Earth Ragers, because having all of these plus having interrupt rock lances and stuff like that is very difficult. Obviously they're just pulling everything for the sake of time and speed. One of the big things that actually semi slows this boss down is that the Taskmaster puts down a riot shield, which any mobs in that current riot shield takes 50% reduced damage, I believe. And so, obviously so he's currently casting the riot shield, as you can see. I do not believe the boss is in that riot shield currently, and so you just have to sort of watch your positioning when he places that riot shield to not. Hopefully the boss is not in that shield when he places it.
Yeah, that's absolutely the strategy. Is once you see the Taskmaster cast that shield, the cover, you just start moving Azrock away until it's no longer affected by the damage taken reduction. Okay, so here comes another Earth Rager from Azrock on the reroller side, but they're going to be able to probably just ignore it and just kill the boss. Yeah, here comes a Resonating Pulse, and that's going to be the end of the boss fight here. Taskmaster goes down not long after, and the reroller's only 4 count away from ending this dungeon. They could accomplish that with jumping on mines after the last boss, or they could trigger a Reaping Wave and pull it into a boss somehow. It's unclear how they would do that. Let's see how they choose to get to Rixa Flex Plane here. It looks like Trell is just going to run right through there. Doesn't take the minecart, takes just the straight, on the mount, right through route of the minefield. And yeah, they're going to run through and probably Shadow Meld. Yeah, everybody on... Melding. And that's a huge meld there. Going to save everybody a ton of time. One of the big reasons we see this comp is this meld is 30 seconds faster than doing it with a death or a battle res or the druid sneaking around or anything like that. So into the boss. Yeah.
Starting on the third boss, and the boss itself doesn't really do too much. It sprays this Azurite, and then it does 2 sprays, and then it'll do 2 blows where she blows the Azurite off, targeting a random person. Hopefully their back is towards the Azurite on the ground to clear the area. The big thing about this boss is the caustic debuff that she places on 2 random people in cycles of 2. Rogues and monks, and I believe DK can also AMS it, and Prout Warrior obviously can spell reflect it. You want to rotate people, so obviously healers only have 1 dispel. Can only dispel 1 of the 2 debuffs, and so you want to rotate between cloak, banish, AMS, spell reflect, to basically ignore that second debuff that she puts on.
Yeah, those chemical burns, you absolutely need a plan that involves no person or no 2 of them going out at once. So Spell Reflect is available for every other one, and you just need to cover the other sets with something like Cloak of Shadows or AMS. I think you can just rotate between Spell Reflect and AMS pretty safely with this comp that the rerollers have. Paint for Femme going to have to do something a little bit more complicated than that. They have longer cooldowns on their stuff, so they'll have to rotate more people handling the chemical burn. But yeah, that ability, very fun one to play around. Very fun one to try and vanish because it's a very short cast time. So it's requires a really quick reaction to vanish effectively. And you can see here, Paint for Femme, about 25% behind on the boss, 30% or so.
Yeah, so real quick, in case the audience doesn't, that cost the chemical burn, it goes on the 2 closest people to the boss, and so typically you can sort of game where you stand. So like if you're trying to spell reflect 1, you can stand on top of her hitbox and it'll always go on you. Obviously, if you don't want the debuff, you want to stand a couple yards away from her and make sure 2 other people are closer to her than you are.
Yeah, it's a very important actually to manage this fight. And the difference between a coordinated group and a non-coordinated group doing this boss fight, you don't really feel it in lower keystones because the chemical burn isn't so lethal. But in a higher key, that chemical burn will absolutely destroy your group if it's not played around well. So you see these teams just making sure that it gets gamed every single time. And actually kind of running out of space here, having to run through this burning Azurite, getting a face full of Azurite, as Rixaflex Flame would say. And they are going to eventually down the boss, are the rerollers. About 40% now ahead of Paint for Femme. Plus, yeah, okay, they still need to finish their last enemy forces count, though, whereas Paint for Femme have triggered all 5 Reaping Waves. So the rerollers have a little bit of, are a little bit ahead in terms of where they are, but have a little bit more work to do before the dungeon is over. So I think this match is completely neck and neck right now.
Yeah,
They're going to execute a skip now. Yeah.
Yeah, so force rerollers shrouding up the middle, and the shroud here, typically on live servers when you're doing a hierarchy and you want to be a little safer, Resagers and rogues can sneak up, and depending on the pat of those enforcers, they're able to get around the true sight and safely get here. Obviously they have shadow meld, so they opted to just shroud up for safety and then just run through all the mobs, get to the platform, and shadow meld, which is obviously a lot quicker than the ladder route.
All right, now you can see Mogul Razdunk being pulled to a very specific spot in this room. Strategies on this boss fight have evolved over time, but one thing that we've discovered recently is that this little grate in the corner of the room here, the corner of the grate towards the middle of the room where you can see everybody standing right now, that's actually a safe spot where none of the micro missiles will ever target. So you'll see where Trell is standing right now, even if the missiles are being aimed at that spot in the map, will never actually hit right there. So you'll see the rerollers are going to be using that strategy and just always stand right there and never move the boss. And yeah, they're just going to hug the safe spot. It doesn't look like it's going to be that safe, but yeah, you can see right where they're standing, where Trell is standing.
It gets a little dicey with Gatling gun. Obviously, if Gatling gun and the missiles overlap at the same time, it may or may not be in your favor of that spot. There's actually a couple different spots. There's that spot that they're currently using, and there's 2 additional spots, quote, that are safe that will never kill you if you're standing in them. Obviously, they opted to do that, but since there's multiple ones, you can this boss is actually very hard from a tank's perspective to move, since he does Gatling gun and so many other casts. And so you can sort of just go, after the second intermission, if you're on the other side of the platform, you just sort of go to the other safe spot instead of trying to drag him. Paint for Femme also drags him to the safe spot. And so you see both of them operating this little corner.
Yeah, there are a couple different strategies groups will use. There's different ones that are available to you as well. If you have like ranged players in your group, they might prefer to go hide outside of bounds of the boss room. But it looks like Paint for Femme is actually dropping some world markers so that they can make some calls during this boss fight about where is safe. Okay, so Paint for Femme is taking a completely different strategy than the rerollers. They are actually going to move around the room to whichever spots are safe instead of standing in that little spot that's always safe, but is much smaller and more dangerous with the Gatling gun. Now, this boss is very damaging to the Protection Warrior. Particularly, the Protection Warriors normally play a talent called Bolster that makes their last stand also give them shield block. And that has very little utility in this boss fight because there's so much magic damage. There's a huge magic damage component to the tank damage on this fight. On live, you'll often see people hearth out after they kill the second boss and switch over away from Bolster towards a talent that buffs their Ignore Pain instead, because that's something that is actually useful on this fight. But presumably these tanks here don't have access to that. Obviously, they can't hearth out. Or maybe they could have, actually. I don't know what the rules are like on that. But it certainly costs too much time to do that in an MBI-style key. There's a lot of tank damage here.
This tank does... this boss does so much magic damage. His melees aren't even considered physical. They're actually magic melees. And so you literally don't have anything to block as a warrior on this. And so you literally just, I don't think you even push that button as a warrior on this fight. I think you literally just ignore pain, spam the entire time. And obviously having blood sport traits are very good for that. But again, the rest of the dungeon, you want all that physical mitigation, right? And so unless you're hearthing out, like Dratna said, it's really difficult for Prot Warriors to survive Tyrannical without taking that talent and more blood support traits.
Yeah, you could just look at Charles' health here. He's just getting trucked every time the boss fires one of those missiles at him. One of those auto attack fire damaging missiles. Ooh, does end up taking a little bit of Gatling gun damage there. That's not too lethal, and Mogul Rise Dunk is almost dead now. So now the rerollers have to kill the goblin inside the little floating head thing and get 4 enemy forces, 4 count, 1% before the dungeon will be over for them. Paint for Femme has 30% left on this boss fight. This is going to be very, very tight. Presumably they're going to kill. They need to make sure they don't reset the boss. Okay, they don't reset the boss. Now they're going to go outside and they're going to jump on some mines. Going to find the crawler mines. It can't be the ones that were already activated during their death skip. Those ones will be bugged out. Okay, it looks like they're just going to kill a. They're going to kill a technician.
Mines are, I believe,
4 mines would do it.
2%. Yeah, correct. Yeah, so it looks like they're just killing this.
They're going to kill the technician. Okay, that works. That works too. And they're gonna kill that technician. Stop the timer at 25 minutes, 16 seconds. It's a very, very close win there, but it is a win for the rerollers, the North American challengers here. I think handing Paint for Femme their first ever map loss in a Keystone Masters event. So love to see it, and we're gonna go on to a game 3.
As you said, this is the first time I believe that Paint for Femme have actually have dropped a game in the entirety of Keystone Masters history. Congratulations, guys. You are the guys who have managed to do that. Drad, if you could check our chat very quickly, that would be absolutely fantastic. But whilst he's doing that, Moose, what I want to ask you is the last game. We saw the Force rerollers were a little bit loosey-goosey, not really doing what they wanted to do. Paint for Femme slightly taking that role now. There were a few things where Femme had a few little weird deaths towards the end, maybe not quite as clean as they'd liked. Do you feel like that was a big influence in them losing that match?
Yeah, I mean, they basically swapped places, right? Like in the first match, Sistar went down and delayed a pull by 20, 30 seconds. Well, in this match at the very beginning, Mew went down and delayed that pull at the very beginning by 20, 30 seconds. And so I think they sort of swapped places. They were pretty neck and neck at that point. Sistara did bring the Unholy Decay, which I feel sped up a lot of the pulls at the beginning, which did give them a slight edge. But all in all, they weren't that far ahead. I mean, it was a very close match at the very end. I think, what was it, 20% on the final boss? And so I think it was really good, and it was just little things here and there that Paint for Femme messed up on that allowed the Force rerollers to capitalize on.
So these recordings, I was just going to add on to that. These recordings were done over, I think it was roughly 2 days each of both of these teams. It almost feels to me like on the first day, Force Rerollers maybe weren't feeling the best, and they came back and recorded this dungeon and the next one on the day after. Pain for Them, I think, recorded this dungeon again and the one we're about to see on the same day. So maybe, who knows? Maybe they were just feeling a little bit tired. Dratnos, what are you going to say?
I think that Sistar played phenomenally on the Death Knight there. Really looked very comfortable on that spec, and it's great to see him, not forced to reroll for that dungeon back over to the Death Knight, on which he was so comfortable. And I think that absolutely made the difference for them. I think the Death Knight was a slightly better composition for that dungeon, and definitely with the players they had, was a better choice for Force Rerollers than if they'd kept the Windwalker there. But Paint for Femme made the Windwalker look phenomenal also.
So can your team name really be Forced Rerollers if you're playing your main?
Yeah, it should be Forced Rerollers and Sistara. We'll get them to change that name.
That might be a disqualification. I mean, should we just stop here? That's completely unacceptable. All jokes aside, though, they have equaled the score 1-1. We shall move into our game, which will be the decider. Pain for Femme, Forced Rerollers. Let's take a look at this final game. We are going to go into the Shrine of the Storm, still on the plus 19. Fortified, Sanguine, Necrotic Reaping. Apparently, I was in a miserable mood that day when I decided to assign these affixes. Moose, what do you make of these combinations, and what do you make of the team compositions?
These are some nasty combinations you picked out. Fortified Shrine is a very yikes combo. Sanguine and Shrine. Shrine just has so many casters, especially at the start. Literally everything is a caster, and the fact casters in Sanguine are just bad. And they're fortified, so they're hitting a lot. They're those water bolts and stuff from all those casters at the beginning are trucking the tank. And you have Necrotic on top of that. So the tank is running away, trying to kite everything out of Sanguine. Luckily, Necrotic and Sanguine sort of go hand in hand that you're kiting anyways because of Necrotic, and stuff's going to be moving out of that Sanguine. And so it's not the end of the world. I think this is a very difficult affix for Shrine in general.
I definitely agree with this. Dratnos, one thing I want to ask you about, this is a dungeon where there are a lot of these snap spots. There's a lot of opportunities in the beginning of the dungeon, the middle of the dungeon, even slightly towards the end. Do you think we will see the teams play into this, bearing in mind that we do have the Sanguine affix, or do you think they're just sort of going to just stay off it a little bit and just play it a little bit more safe?
So I expect to see snap spots still used, but I think they'll be used in a more controlled and a little bit less all-in way than they would be if Sanguine weren't active. I think that we'll see teams often. I think what they'll do is they'll pull a bunch of mobs, jump on the snap spot, and then jump off the snap spot. And by doing that, they're going to group them all up, but they won't be on a snap spot, and they'll be able to be kited for the Sanguine. But that will force them to all group initially. So that's what I expect mostly for them to do in these first parts of the dungeon before the first boss.
I am personally hoping for a lot of Sanguine, hopefully not that much healing. We are going to go into our final game to decide who will become the very first KSM Summer Champions, Shrine of the Storm. Let me get that one going, and then I will let you boys take it away. Oh, hello, that's not working. We will just cut to Dratnos for a second whilst I fix that, as that was not quite working. If you could talk a little bit more about the dungeon we're about to see, I'll get that fixed up as soon as possible.
No worries. One thing to note as well that we have here is we have some teams have chosen to be Night Elves for their dwarves, and some have chosen to be, Night Elves for their rogues, and some have chosen to be dwarves. Paint for Femme here are playing both Night Elf for their rogues, so they're going to have access to Shadow Melds and Vanishes. So that might facilitate a couple of spots where they need to drop combat very quickly within that time period where Vanish is off on cooldown. Whereas the rerollers are both their rogues are playing dwarf, so they'll be doing a little bit more damage, but they have to rely entirely on their Vanish, and they won't have access to Shadow Meld. That's the only real difference here between the comps. Otherwise, we're seeing the exact same lineup. Really a very fitting send-off to Season 2 here. The Prot Warrior, the Resto Druid, the 2 Aloe Rogues, and the Windwalker.
I believe we are ready to go, so hopefully we will try this again, make sure this works this time, and then, assuming all is good, I will hand over to you guys. Shrine of the Storm, there we go. Wouldn't be KSM without a small graphical error. Off you go, guys, for the KSM Summer Showdown Finals.
All right, here it is. The Shrine of the Storm. This is for all the marbles, all the millions of bragging points on the line here between the rerollers and Paint for Femme North America versus the EU in the grand finals. It all comes down to this.
So typically what you see a lot of teams do is you do some sort of big pull right off the bat. This is fortified, so I imagine they're going to do some sort of big pull with lust at the beginning. Obviously, you sort of want to kill all these small things, get Sanguine out of the way. I imagine there's going to be either some snap or LOS big pull coming up with all this stuff on this next pull for Paint for them and Force Rollers neck and neck going into this next room.
Yeah, so both teams elect to take out that first room. They're not going to skip it or anything. And now we're going to get to see how they handle presumably what will be a big pull from both teams. It looks like Paint for Femme, they're sending Femme to do a little bit of snapping action. Snaps them on there and is going to, the droplets don't drop Sanguine, so they don't have to worry about that. But after they get those droplets handled, they're then going to jump off of the snap spot and start kiting into the room. Now, one of the things about going back into the starting room is that they'll then be able to line of sight around a bunch of different objects, and they won't have to interrupt the water blast. They can just dodge them. The water blasts on a fortified 19 do absurd amounts of damage, and a couple of those uninterrupted will murder a tank without defensives. So they do take care of those, though. The rerollers, looks like on a pretty similar pull in the bottom left corner of your screen, also taking down a similar combination of mobs here. You have to be very careful on fortified to not pull too many of these things. They all do something that needs to be interacted with.
Yeah, so a lot of these mobs here, a lot of casts that you have to interrupt. You have to interrupt the Water Blast, as we said. You also have the Spiritualist cast a heal every 24 seconds that you need to interrupt. And then you also have Templars that cast Protective Aura, and both teams are playing Alliance, so they do not have the option to purge, and I believe none of these classes can actually purge. So that is also another interrupt that you need to be interrupting, and you cannot just let go off like you can on board.
Did you see what they did there? Okay, they snapped on to the brazier there, and then they used Ursul's Vortex, and when they snapped off up the stairs, it vortexed them back down onto that red X world marker to keep them all nice and grouped up, all these casters there when they chose to snap at different times. And that's going to let them manage the kiting here beautifully, is Paint for Femme. That's a fantastic strategy. And they're going to use the Typhoon here to manage the Sanguine healing. And this is going to get them a ton of damage here. And you'll see, it looks like they're pulling a tiny bit ahead of the rerollers.
I think that play just pushed them a little further ahead with that grouping. They're able to just, AoE everything down nice and evenly.
And that is going to be the first Reaping Wave triggered for Paint for Femme. They're going to go into a... Okay, no, they're not going to... That would be ridiculous. They're going to Shadow Meld. All right, it's okay. It's okay. I got excited there. I was hoping we'd see something cool, but that's not going to be the cool thing just yet.
So
no
one
living
of the things you'll
today.
see in Shrine of the Storm, you can basically skip every single Reaping Wave in Shrine of the Storm, just due to the layout and as long as you are Night Elf. And so you can skip Reaping, obviously, if you go far enough away from the Reaping. I believe it's 60, 100 yards. I don't remember exactly, but as long as you go far enough away, you can reset the Reaping and if you all Shadow Meld at the same time. So you see both teams do that. Force Rerollers actually gets a couple of the Reaping Waves, but it's not a big deal. They just pull it into this next pack. Both teams doing a very similar pull here. Again, you have the Water Blast you need to interrupt, you have the Templar with the Protective Aura, and you have the Spiritualist casting that heal.
Yeah, now, because they've melded this first Reaping Wave, it means that every single time they trigger a Reaping Wave for the remainder of this dungeon, they are going to all need to reset combat, or else that first Reaping Wave will come join them. So that means all 5 Reaping Waves will have to be skipped in some capacity for the rerollers and for Paint for Femme, who are on the exact same strategy. Paint for Femme here, already on the first boss, though. This is a little bit rough with Sanguine. They're going to be dropping Sanguine in the boss room, whereas the rerollers have decided to take it a little bit slower and a little bit safer. And they are not going to kill anything in the boss area. Okay. Nope, now they're moving into the boss area too. All right, so they're behind by a couple seconds, and they will be dropping some Sanguine Puddles in the boss room, but they need to be very, very careful to not drop anything where Aquasur will plant itself, because that would be disastrous. That would mean that the boss would full heal, because of course it does not move outside of that.
Yeah, so this boss is fortified, and it's not as big of a deal on fortified, but much like the third boss in Motherlode, this boss really doesn't do that much in terms of damage when he's in this primary phase. In the second phase, in intermission, he splits up into 3 and does a lot of damage. Each of them just duplicate the boss's abilities. But aside from that, at the beginning and at the end, he really doesn't do that much. So you see a lot of teams on live, and it doesn't look like they're doing it here in either team, but they pull the trash down the stairs, which are just 2 casters. All you have to do is keep them interrupted, just to maximize time. And so you see Paint for Femme, the boss split up into 3, and one of the big things you want to do, you want to have aggro, and one person has to be in melee for each of these mobs. And typically you have the tank go to one, the healer go to one, and the DPS focus down the other. But if one person is not in range, they will actually cast I forgot what it's called.
Sea Blast, yeah.
Sea Blast, and it does, a lot of damage to just a random person and can basically insta-give you. So you got to be very careful. So you do see them pull these 2 casters, and you see a Mew go over and Windspeaker Heldis is not tied to those 4 mobs, and so you're able to proximity pull those 4 mobs off of Windspeaker Heldis, just for a little bit more count. And obviously they're very meaningless mobs. They don't really do that much, and so you're able to pull them into the boss. They do drop that same one.
Oh,
right
so
next to
close to healing Aquasur, but it's not
close.
Oh my goodness, nearly gave me a heart attack there. But yeah, they are not going to end up healing the boss. Very, very close to doing so though. And yeah, they're going to finish up this trash here right at the end. Rerollers also doing the exact same strategy here, but are behind by a few seconds. We'll have to see now. I expect that neither team will be fighting any number of mini-bosses in this dungeon. On live, these mini-bosses have received some increases to how much count they give. They've basically doubled how much count they give. But at the time of this recording, these bosses gave such a bad ratio of count to how much health they had, that you basically never saw a team choose to pull them. So they're going to be using Shroud and such to sneak by those mobs. There's another interesting behavior with those mobs where they're supposed to have true sight, but they don't actually develop true sight until they get in combat for the first time.
So
So
as
you can
saw,
still
they just
shroud past them, yeah. But if you accidentally pull one of them, you can no longer shroud past it for the rest of the dungeon. So that this dungeon kind of piles onto you. Sometimes it feels like when you wipe, literally the whole world just hates you, and everything that you skipped before you can't skip again. And
Shrine is a very all or nothing dungeon. Even in MDI, you use a couple to wipe and Shrine, and they just essentially AFK because there's no point in unless the other team also wipes. There's not really much point in you just basically lose 5 minutes. The catch up mechanic is very far in the dungeon and is very hard to recover. So you see both teams doing pulling both of these mobs. These are actually very difficult mobs to pull together. You have a lot of water blasts going off. You have the tempests going off, and then you have the other guys that hit the tank pretty hard, and then they do the this AoE that's going off right now. And so you've got to do a combination of interrupts and stuns or displacement abilities to do all this. But this is an actually rather difficult pull, and you actually see a lot of teams lust it on live if you're pulling multiple of these.
Yeah, this pull wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that you're in this this hallway that is so narrow, and there's 7 different abilities you have to try and dodge. Not to mention the Sanguine also clogging up this hallway here, healing up all these mobs. But yeah, when you're fighting it in this hallway like this, it is actually just so difficult. You have to watch your feet so carefully. And you generally actually want to interrupt the Tempests even and make sure you stop as many of these whirling slams as possible. Otherwise, you have to lose a lot of damage as you're dodging stuff. But yeah, they're going to do a reasonably good job here, the rerollers, of managing the Sanguine healing. A little bit did go off on these Ironhull Apprentices earlier, but it's not too bad, and it does save time over pulling things two separately. Okay, yeah, and now they're going to execute the big skip that we saw Paint for Femme also execute. They're just going to run right through here and meld onto the other side. Presumably they're going to make use of Ring of Peace if they have it, which they're not going to do it. They're just going to run through and meld, and they're okay. They've done it. They've executed this skip. Paint for Femme also managed to do it. They used a Ring of Peace to facilitate it, but the rerollers didn't even need to commit that ability. And now Trelsky are looking to see what to do here. Pulls 5 mobs, including 2 Water Blasters. Starts off with the Spell Reflect on the first 2 Water Blasts, and now they're going to move to start interrupting the remainder of those. Meanwhile, Paint for Femme already has some trash down here, moves into the Tide Sage Initiates. These could be pretty problematic on Sanguine. They drop Sanguine on their death and can make it so that whatever you're fighting at the same time just lasts forever. I've seen multiple times where you just you pull this Ironhull Apprentice and this Galecaller Apprentice, and then you keep pulling Tide Sage Initiates onto them, and you end up dealing 400% of their health over the course of 10 minutes as they keep getting full healed every time you kill off a new initiate. But of course, Paint for Femme would never fall prey to those kind of events that happen in my keys.
No, I've seen some pretty good Ring of Pieces going out and some Typhoons, so they're doing a pretty good job of handling the Sanguine, especially on those smaller mobs. And Femme is doing an excellent job kiting everything, utilizing that Ring of Peace and placing Sanguine in a really good opportune places. So you see they're pulling the last bit of initiates, and again we have to deal with that Sanguine. So this pull takes, usually these are pretty easy mobs to deal with, but that Sanguine plus they all run away. So you see they're saving that AoE stun for when the mobs run away and the Ring Piece goes down. Unfortunately, the Vortex went down at the same time. That was a miscommunication and healed those mobs up all the way. And it seems that they reset actually.
No, they got a little confused there. They were, but they managed to. I think they'd started their fleeing sequence, and then even though they were full health, they kept fleeing because they'd started that. But they do eventually get taken care of. But yeah, the Vortex interaction there with the Ring of Peace ended up being a full heal for those last 2 mobs, and that cost them a couple seconds. They are now moving in to the Tide Sage Council. Galecaller Fae being the much more deadly of these 2. Some groups will choose to focus down Galecaller Fae and then go pull some more trash. Other groups will choose to just evenly damage these 2 mobs, these 2 bosses, and kill them at the same time. Those are the 2 main strategies that we see in this dungeon.
Yeah, so killing the bosses at the same time obviously is faster rather. However, focusing down Windspeaker is obviously safer. You typically, this is a very dangerous pull, especially for melee. The tornadoes get pretty hectic towards the end of the fight. Range and healers are obviously they are actually able to step outside of the arena, outside this little circular arena, onto one of the ramps and completely ignore the tornadoes that are spawned. So range have it very easy. Obviously, you won't benefit from that increased haste little puddle that she puts down periodically, but you also don't have to move and can cast freely.
Ooh. And good play here from Trell. Drops his necrotic stacks. He had a nice 17 stack roll in a necrotic. Steps into the reinforcing ward though, and does end up dropping that debuff. Great knowledge of the interaction between that affix and the boss ability there. They do end up letting a cast go off, the rerollers do, which does track everybody for a little bit of damage. Not the end of the world though.
Yeah, one cast isn't that big of a deal. And
it looks like they are slightly focusing Gale Caller Fae, but they're also doing reasonable amounts of damage to both. Meanwhile, Pain for Femme have already slain Gale Caller Fae and are just working on Brother Ironhull. Okay, now off goes the rogue here to grab some more apprentices and initiate, and they're going to pull this into the boss here. They do have to be very careful of Sanguine. One way to lose a ton of time is by dropping a Sanguine pool under this boss while he's casting a sequence of abilities. So that's something that they absolutely have to watch out for.
Yeah, this is pretty common. Like a couple of the other bosses that we've encountered today, this second boss doesn't really do that much. I mean, he hits the tank pretty hard, but the DPS is pretty much just a tank and spake. So you typically do want to pull some other mobs, either these three that they pulled, or sometimes they run ahead and get the enforcer up ahead. You want to do something to optimize your time with this boss, since they don't really do anything. And you see there that these mobs are about to die, and the Ring of Peace goes down. They efficiently knock those mobs out of the way so that the boss does not get healed with Sanguine. They kill the boss before finishing off this final mob to work around that Sanguine.
Here comes a Tide Sage Enforcer. This thing on Fortified does huge amounts of damage with Deep Smash, but that ability is kiteable and it is spell reflectable, so you can actually end up using it to your advantage, just running in whenever spell reflects up and using it to deal damage right back to the Enforcer. And they're going to take that down. Is Pain for Femme. They are 59.5% on the enemy forces meter. Let's see what they're going to do here.
So all they have to do here is kill all these small dudes. As soon as they die, Reaping is triggered, and then they haul ass all the way to, they go super quick all the way to the bridge. So they're running across the bridge right here, and then they are going to Showdown. And let's see. It looks like Femme is going to.
Yes, the meld is good, and they are going to end up getting through there, skipping the third Reaping Wave, and now they're going to have to kill. So being at 60% at this part of the dungeon means that they're going to need pretty much the entire bridge here, plus every remaining mob in the dungeon, in order to secure the required enemy forces to actually stop the timer at the end. Whereas the rerollers looks like are also executing. Okay, the rerollers are a bit ahead on count. They're instead actually killing mobs further back. Here we are with the rerollers, triggering this third Reaping Wave while fighting stuff. So it looks like they're going to end up not fighting as much of the bridge, and they are instead going to kill more trash earlier. So we're going to start to see the teams really diverging with their strategy right now. Or maybe they're going to kill this Ritualist and then do a skip. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to tell. These rerollers.
They have the Reaping here, so I don't think they're going to skip this. I think they're just going to kill this. A little bit wasted time. Oh, nope, they are going to skip. It looks like they are using that Ring of Peace to skip it all. And in the same exact fashion, they do get 5% more, whereas Pain for Femme just skipped at 60%, so they will have one less pack of mobs to pull on this bridge. I believe Pain for Femme is just pulling this entire bridge.
They do have one lone Risen Soul that has decided it's going to ruin the reroller's day, though. Sometimes this happens here. These things just decide that they're going to still be in combat with you for no good reason, and that is going to dramatically slow down the rerollers here. This Risen Soul is going to cost them something like 30 seconds. You do hate to see it, but that's the price you pay when you try and skip stuff. Is sometimes that happens to you. Now they're going to move on to start pulling this bridge. The Pain for Femme is nearly done with the bridge, and Pain for Femme have killed every single thing on the bridge. I think the rerollers may be able to skip some of the bridge, but I'm not sure exactly what.
Pack. There is one pretty dangerous pack. There's two patrolling packs, and the right one is pretty nasty. It has three, I forget the name of what they're called.
Those Depth Bringers?
Deathbringers, yeah. 3 Deathbringers, which are pretty nasty and need to be CC'd. The left one only has 1 Deathbringer, which is a lot easier to manage. Typically, you don't see teams pull that right one, but I believe Pain for Femme did pull that right one. And
yeah, it's manageable. It's a lot scarier in higher keys, like on high live keys, than it is in MDI. And MDI style pulls, you can usually nuke it down fast enough that you're not gonna get murdered by all the void bolts.
So we didn't see it, but Pain for Fim actually shrouded past the tentacles in the chapel, just behind them. And I believe what their plan is, they're going to do the boss, and then they're going to pull one of those tentacle packs, and then Shadow Meld to again skip another reaping.
Yeah, again, they have to skip every single reaping wave, so they'll skip that 4th reaping wave with either a meld or with jumping off the side. I think they'll do with meld though, and then they will skip the 5th reaping wave by triggering it after the last boss dies, and that's going to be their plan for how to handle all the reaping waves here. Meanwhile, we see just handling Lord Stormsong. This is a boss fight where there are some mind controls that go out. It's possible to get lucky and activate your Cloak of Shadows before the mind control goes out. And then if it would have targeted you, instead nothing happens. So that can be a pretty big time saver, particularly on tyrannical keys, on high tyrannical keys. That'll end up saving quite a bit of time because it takes such a long time to break those people out. There's also this little jacuzzi behind them that they can go stand in to drop the mind control. They need to be DPS through, but that jacuzzi deals some damage here. So you'll see Ricky gets targeted, and he's just going to eat up a bunch of these balls that are floating towards him. And has to be very careful. Can't take too many at once here because they might end up breaking out of the mind control and then getting stunned.
He's definitely stutter stepping, trying to only get one at a time. He knew he was close to breaking himself out. But yeah, that jacuzzi definitely works. It's a little sketch sometimes. It's the LOS and trying to jump out of the pool can be difficult for some people, and so it definitely takes a little practice to do it properly, but that is an option to break yourself out, obviously. So you see Pain for Fim finishing up this boss while Force Rerollers is just now starting this boss. Force Rerollers did pull a couple more things. They did pull one of those tentacle packs, but like I said earlier, Pain for Fim is going back for their tentacle pack right now. They are triggering and reaping right here, and I believe they are going to Shadow Meld.
Yeah, it looks like it's. Oh, some stuff has snapped to them though. That is unfortunate. That does happen. Shrine of the Storm, a dungeon where sometimes those things will happen, particularly when you make use of snap spots earlier in the dungeon. Sometimes mobs that like their ghosts on snap spots will then snap to you on a non-snap spot later. So that's something that has happened to Pain for Fem here. It looks like they're just going to decide to kill it while swimming. Whereas the rerollers have already triggered that 4th reaping wave and are fighting Lord Stormsong, but they've already dealt with the reaping wave, so they're not going to have to do that afterward. They're just going to get to go straight through that jacuzzi. So the rerollers are certainly still behind, but they're not behind by as much as it would appear based on the content that they're doing right now, the Lord Stormsong fight. Pain for Fem now.
Look at these noobs. No diving suits on Pain for Fem. Huh?
Can't use them on the tournament realm.
Yeah. Typically on live, you want to, if you're min-maxing, you want to put on those diving suits from Leatherworking, and helps you increase your swim speed. But obviously, you cannot do that here. They are not able to skip these eels. They may have purposely pulled these. Typically, you save these eels for the boss fight.
This is certainly once they've pulled one pack, it makes sense to pull a second pack because it would just be slow to do one by itself. But yeah, maybe they could have shrouded if they wanted to. They might have still been in combat with a reaping mob, and that might have prevented them from using a shroud to get past. It's possible to get past without shrouding. But yeah, okay, Pain for Fem. We're getting into this last boss fight now. There's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong here. But on a fortified setting, it should die in a relatively small number of phases. They can probably do it in one long phase coming out of this if they have their Bloodlust ready, which they'll be able to wait to trigger that phase until the Bloodlust is ready. So they're going to try and get as much damage as they can here on pull, everybody using their cooldowns if they have them available, and then they will wait to re-engage the boss until their cooldowns are once again ready. I guess they're not going to have less, though, because this fight is not going to last long enough. Okay, time to kill these Forgotten Denizens downstairs.
Yeah,
setting a focus on the far one.
Forgotten Denizens can be a little sketchy. Typically, the way you want to do it is you want to aim for the very first cast, and the very first cast, one cast by itself will not, if it does go off, it will not kill the people downstairs. It does about 30 to 50% of their HP depending on the key level. So as long as you're focusing down one of them and killing them downstairs, it's fine. And then you redirect once you kill one on the second one. The big thing is that you do not want a cast to go off when the healer is coming down and they have that buff on them, because it will insta-give them. And so there is some sort of communication between the healer and the DPS when they're transitioning. If you are going to let one go off, you need to make sure that the healer either dispels himself prior to going down, or just go down.
Yeah, and they stay outside of that phase
Yeah.
until the casts have
Right,
gone
right.
off. Absolutely. Otherwise, that's how a lot of Shrine of the Storm runs end, is the healer just phases down and then the cast goes off and then they die. And then you get yelled at for missing your kick. And then your group falls apart and nobody invites you to things anymore.
Yeah, feels bad.
But that's not what's going to happen to any of these players. They're super talented. They're going to get all these kicks. They're not going to lose all their friends downstairs here. Fighting the Forgotten Denizen is the forced rerollers here in this first phase. They're about a minute behind Paint for Fem. And they also have an extra eel pack to still kill. They did not pull any eel packs along the way here. Force rollers might be able to make up this time difference if they pull all four. If they can do all 4 eels at once, all 4 eel packs, they might be able to end this thing a little bit ahead of Paint for Fem. But looks like Paint for Fem is engaged with the second boss phase here now. They're just going right into the boss, and then they'll do the eels afterwards. The rerollers moving towards this trash, charging in.
I think Paint for Fem's going to get another phase. I think they've been in the second phase for a while.
Yeah, that boss is nearly at full energy. I might have been wrong to suggest that it was possible to do this in one phase.
Force rerollers do have
lust. Yeah, okay.
Them, so they might be able to one phase this, and 2 phasing this boss actually wastes a ton of time. So this actually might be closer than you think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If Force rerollers, if they have their cooldowns, which looking at their meters, it looks like they pretty much all have stuff ready. Cynic doesn't have Adrenaline Rush, but other than that, they've got their stuff coming up soon. Looks like they're probably going to do eels to allow Touch of Death to get off cooldown, so they can have that for the start of Lust. That is a cooldown that benefits tremendously from having Lust available. So yeah, they're moving in to some eel packs. These eels have a potential to bug out if you pull them in the wrong way. So it's very important to make sure that you let them run to you and that they don't get stuck in the terrain, because that can be a case where they'll then start all resetting. It looks like the Force rollers though know what's up. Trell doing a great job of managing these mobs. Paint for Fem has not killed the boss yet. They're leaving the boss channeling.
They're pulling the second. Oh, they did not. They're doing it.
It's not channeling. Yeah, they're doing it live. All right, here we go. Necrotic's starting to stack up on Fem. Fem needs to make sure that he keeps threat over Mewo. Mewo can pull threat here dramatically, very, very quickly because of the promises of power. And then he'll also get entirely one-shot by literally a slight breeze will kill Mewo here.
Very scary. Oh, it looks like Paint for Fem kills the boss, and they are finishing off these eels. The Ring of Peace goes down to Fem. Hopefully drop his stacks of Necrotic and the eel debuff, and it looks like they're swiftly killing this.
Yeah, that's going to be Paint for Fem in 24 minutes. Incredible Shrine of the Storm run. It was a great run for the rerollers as well, but Paint for Fem does take it down here in the grand finals. They are our summer showdown champs. Congratulations to Paint for Fem. Well played all around. Great run.
As you say that, Paint for Fem taking the game and taking the series. They are going to be our very first KeystoneMasters Summer Showdown champions. Congratulations to you guys. Most initial reactions, worthy winners? Do you think I did well?
No, I think both teams did really well. I think both teams had a couple reaping hiccups, but I mean, Shrine of the Storm is just one of those dungeons where like so much can go wrong. And honestly, for as much stuff that can go wrong in Shrine, not that much stuff went wrong for either team. Like there were very minor hiccups. I don't think either team had very, big costly deaths. I think it was both teams actually had a couple reaping hiccups. I think the skips were pretty well performed from both teams. I think they did what they wanted to do. And yeah, I mean, I think both teams did excellent in Shrine, and then in all 3 games it was very close every time. And obviously, Paint for Fame came out on top. I guess no one can dethrone them.
And Dranos, I hope you have enjoyed the evening. Have there been any standout moments for you? Anything that you looked at and went, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna try that when I get into season 3.
Yeah, I mean, season 3, it's going to be such a dramatically different environment. Obviously, everybody's going to have these essences that do powerful things. Different classes may start to see some play, and of course, reaping is going away, and we're going to have to start playing around beguiling instead. But yeah, I think this was just an awesome. There were so many cool things that we did with the reaping waves here today in these 6 games we watched. So many cool reaping pulled onto stuff and reaping being skipped in different ways. So I cannot think of a better way to say goodbye to season 2 and the fantastic affix that has been reaping than with this tournament.
Reaping, it has been an absolute pleasure. Let's take one final look at our bracket before we do our send-offs and remind ourselves how we got here. Pain for Fem taking their first game over Hula and the Blowfish, putting them in the final. Force Rerollers winning theirs. We've got Global. Global taking third place, Hula taking fourth in the lower bracket. And of course, Pain for Fem taking the 2-1 victory in the final. It has been an absolutely fantastic evening. Again, massive congratulations to Pain for Fem. They have claimed the title of the KeystoneMasters Summer Showdown Championships. I want to thank you two, Dratnos and Moose, for coming and casting for me. Very much appreciate that. All the people, production, there are many people who you do not see. There is a lot of work that goes into making a show like this, so I really appreciate anyone who's helped in any way. Moderators, editors, there are so many people, too many to mention. And of course, all of you beautiful people for sticking with us over these past 3-ish hours or so and watching. We do have a little bit of a break again in KSM as we move into the MDI summer season, which I believe starts on the 21st of July. I think sign-ups start on the 21st of July, and then I think we'll be seeing some actual cup play in August, September. However, make sure that you follow us on Twitter at KeystoneMasters. Stay up to date with everything that we are doing. Any final thoughts from you, Dratnos, before we go?
No, just thanks so much for letting me cast this thing. This is so much fun, and I'm really impressed by all the teams here that have played today.
And Moose?
No, same. Again, thanks for having me. Again, same. Stratos was really fun to do it. I loved all the teams, and I have a lot of friends that competed, so it was really fun seeing all of them in action, and everyone did an awesome job, and it was a really fun competition.
It has been an excellent competition. We hope to provide you with many more in the future. That has been all for tonight. Thank you so much. I've been Sarah. This has been the KeystoneMasters Summer Showdown, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you.